everybody, and welcome back to yet another video, and to another part of Project 10K, the series where I celebrate reaching 10,000 subscribers on the channel by making 10 special videos. And today, we have a pretty big one, dare I say, the biggest Project 10K project yet. It's time for the Custom Mega Review. I've been custom painting cars diecast since the summer of 2017 using Sharpie paint pens. They're really fun and simple to use. They're simply these oil-based pens that work as paint. They dry super fast. I have them in a variety of colors, and I typically also use regular Sharpies to add additional thinner details. I've been painting cars since right after Cars 3 came out. I've done hundreds over the years. Currently, we're sitting at over 130 in the collection, but I tend to repaint and repurpose customs from the past over time. In total, I've probably done well over 200 or 300 different custom cars diecast designs, and today I'm going to be reviewing all of the ones that are currently in my collection. I previously did this all the way back in 2019, and I'm super excited to do it again. You guys will get to see all the customs that I currently have in my collection, from Cars Adventures to Batcar to Ties Cars 4 to just fun, random, miscellaneous ones. It's all going to be here, every single custom I currently have. The only exception I'm putting down are no work in progress customs. I'm not doing any customs that aren't finished, just ones that are done, because a lot of the ones that are unfinished are sort of spoilers for upcoming projects or other things like that. But without any further ado, let's get started. Nothing else to say here. Let's review all the customs. I hope you guys enjoy. This video has been a blast to make. Up first, in order of my collection, we have Concept Art Lightning McQueen. This is one of several items I made back in early 2018 based on concept art and deleted scenes, where I adapted the simplistic style of Cars storyboards onto a diecast. As you can see, this is way more simple in terms of detail than pretty much any of my other customs. The eyes are simple black circles. He just has lines and basic shapes for the headlights and the definition of the hood and stuff like that. He's just one simple base red color because, well, that's what storyboards look like. They're super simplistic. I based this specifically on several storyboards from the first Cars movie. As you can see, this doesn't use a Lightning McQueen mold. Instead, it's a repaint of a Bobby Swift model racer because in early Cars concept art, Lightning McQueen was much closer in shape to real-world NASCAR racers than what we ended up getting. We have the number 57 on either side, and as you can see, yeah, completely, totally simplistic. This is one of very few customs from 2018 that I still have. One of very, very few 2018 customs that I've never gone back and touched up. I like this simple look to him, and I like the uneven paint that makes it look as if he's simply been sketched or colored in with like colored pencil. That's the look I was going for here, and I think I did a pretty good job. The same is true for my next custom, Lightning McQueen with clown makeup, once again directly based on storyboards, this time from Cars 2. This guy is actually a repaint of an old Dynaco McQueen that I had as a kid. You could actually see, if you look very closely, he has raised eyelids. I think I really nailed this one. Another old custom that I haven't gone back and touched up with the sort of uneven storyboard looking paint, and of course the crazy clown makeup from when a bunch of clown pitties attack a racetrack in a story that Mater's telling. One day I want to go back and do more concept art deleted scene cars. I used to have a few more. You'll see I have 2 Maters, but I also used to have a Cruise, which I no longer have. I think if I were to do more deleted scene customs now, I'd probably use mini racers instead for them, but yeah, this one is one that I still think is pretty fun. There aren't very many things you could repaint a Chester Whipple filter into, which is why I turned my spare Chester into a golden version of himself. Yeah, Chester is so unique, there's really not much you could pull off with this custom. When I first repainted this item all the way back in 2017, I turned it into a custom based on Cool Action TV's mascot, which was a really bad idea, trying to paint regular race car details on an item that's just so bumpy. Eventually, in 2018, I turned it into a gold Chester, and that's how it's stayed ever since. I think it honestly really holds up. I think it's still a very good-looking custom. The face still looks pretty good, despite the age of the item. And, yeah, I don't know. I don't really ever plan to do anything with this. It's just a custom I have, because what else can you do with a Chester, right? One of my rules when it comes to making customs is to not make things from the movies because there's a chance Mattel will make it and then my custom will immediately be obsolete and kind of pointless. I've broken this rule on a few occasions, one of those being with this guy right here. This is my damaged Rusty's Lightning McQueen, of course based on McQueen's iconic crash scene from Cars 3. I genuinely don't think we'll ever get this in diecast form. I've talked about that on several occasions. I just don't think they are going to make a McQueen that's, this crazily beaten up. So back in 2018, I decided to take matters into my own hands and make my very own damaged Cars 3 Rusty's McQueen. And I think it holds up just fine enough. There are some clever details I did, I think, by 2018 tie standards. I blacked out one of the entire tires to make it look like the tire was missing, like in the movie. Since in the film his spoiler is completely ripped off, I drew this big, thick black line through it to make it look like the spoiler was in two parts. And I have a bunch of black paint here representing all sorts of dirt and grime and scrapes on him. I also made it look like this tire was shredded by kind of blacking out parts of it. As you can see, a lot of detail went into this guy, and while I think nowadays I could definitely do a far more film accurate and superior looking one, for what it's worth, this McQueen has done perfectly fine in my collection, serving its purpose as a damaged McQueen that just sits on my table to fill in a gap for an item that we haven't gotten. From one damaged McQueen to another, we have Team LM Lightning McQueen, from my McQueen's Team and Redline movies. He's the first of the Cars Adventures / Cars Adventures movie McQueens that I still have in my collection, and clearly, he's seen better days. In my film McQueen's Team, this was the primary McQueen paint job used. But at the end of that movie, he gets captured, and that leads right into Redline, where we see him imprisoned and all beaten up like this. Instead of making a regular Team McQueen custom and then a damaged version, I just turned the Team McQueen into a damaged version. I scraped him all up, eventually ripped off one of his tires, closed his eyes, which I actually did after Redline. I made a few changes to him after Redline, and yeah, that's how he remains still to this day. He's a pretty gnarly looking McQueen. Honestly, I don't know why I still have this one as is. I could probably repurpose him into a graveyard car or something, or at the very least, open the poor guy's eyes back up. He's clearly seen better days, and you know what? It would be nice to maybe one day make a regular, non-damaged Team Lightning McQueen custom again, since I do quite like the paint job. Now, unfortunately, I no longer have the McQueen from Redline. I don't remember what that was repurposed into. But yeah, this is the only McQueen from the Redline series that I still have as is. From one of the later seasons of Cars Adventures Lap 1 in 2019, we have Protectors of Radiator Springs Lightning McQueen. This is one of my all-time favorite custom McQueen designs. I really love all the Protectors of Radiator Springs. I think Jackson is my favorite, but this McQueen here is easily my second favorite. I absolutely love how this turned out with the black and purple color scheme. The Protectors of Radiator Springs were a spy team created in Cars Adventures to help, protect Radiator Springs, and we still see them occasionally in the series to this day, and whenever McQueen is involved, I always make sure to swap on over to this custom. This sort of lightning bolt on the hood design was something that I originally did for the Redline McQueen. I was inspired by the Rusty's McQueen from Cars 3, and it's sort of a design style I've gone with on a lot of different McQueens just to try to make the hood look a bit different. We have really simplistic angular shapes for the lightning bolt. Another thing that I tend to do pretty often on customs to try to go for a more stylized design. But yeah, I really love the black and purple all over him. I think he's got a pretty great face, and it's one that I still use in Cars Adventures quite frequently to this day. Really, really love this one. When I started Cars Adventures Lap 2 in 2020, I wanted Lightning to have his own paint job for the series, just like how he has a new look in nearly every Cars project. And so, I created Return to Radiator Springs Lightning McQueen, which has become the definitive Cars Adventures McQueen, used in nearly every episode of the series since I introduced it back in 2020, with a few exceptions. When I do Christmas seasons, I swap this McQueen out for the holiday variants. When Cars on the Road came out, I used Cars on the Road McQueen for a bit, and I also have used Road Trip McQueen for vacation storylines and the Route 66 Dash and stuff. But other than that, this has been the main go-to Cars Adventures McQueen, and I think it's one of my best McQueen customs, if not my best McQueen custom of all time. My goal with it was to combine the different colors typically used on my McQueen designs and used by McQueen in general. Red, like most of his paint jobs, dark blue from Fabulous McQueen, and black, which I've used as an accent color or primary color on several different McQueen customs. It all comes together to make a McQueen that celebrates the history of the character's designs, and it also includes a little Lightning McQueen logo here on the hood, which actually went on to inspire my Lightning Cup customs in Ty's Cars 4. This custom is one that I've actually touched up a few times, as my paint does fade over time. I touched it up in 2021 when I did the Real World Cars Adventure season, and I think I may have to do another touch-up for him again soon, although I do think I did a second touch-up. I don't remember when, though. Up next, we have Monster Truck Lightning McQueen. This custom started out life back in 2018 as a Cars video game custom based on one of Lightning's alternate paint jobs when he's a monster truck in the old Cars video games. But I eventually decided to repaint it in 2021 for Cars Adventures and make it my own original design. This uses a plastic Frightening McMean as a base, which in hindsight I wish I hadn't repainted back in the day, since he did have an exclusive expression. I really wish I had kept this one, but whatever. Here it is now as a monster truck custom, and I really like this design. I first used this in Cars Adventures Lap 2 Season 11 when Lightning is challenged to a monster truck race, and I used it again more recently in Lap 3 Season 2. It's just become the monster truck design when I need one in Cars Adventures. I really do like this design and how it turned out. Always love using the red and black color scheme. I think the silver adds a nice accent to it as well. One of the boldest things I've ever done in Cars Adventures is making it seem like Lightning McQueen was killed. At the end of Lap 2 Season 14, Rod Redline reappears and knocks out McQueen, and he is presumed dead. I still remember the audience reaction to this day. I didn't think anybody would buy it, and everybody did. A lot of people really thought that I just went there, and I was really proud that I was able to pull off such a shocking revelation. Of course, McQueen comes back later on towards the end of the next season, Lap 2 Season 15, now brainwashed by Rod Torque Redline into one of his soldiers called the Executioner. As such, this McQueen looks very similar to the Redline agents, but in one of my favorite details, he doesn't have a number, he just has a red stripe on the side to conceal his identity, since now his job is execution. Very cool, thanks! If this McQueen seems vaguely familiar to you and you haven't watched Cars Adventures, I actually used this back in the day. I did a How I Paint My Customs tutorial in 2018, and I used this very plastic McQueen as the model McQueen, turning him into a McQueen from Cars Race-O-Rama. You can still see two of his wheels were kept and his painted base as well. This is a plastic McQueen, one of a few McQueens that are plastic in my custom collection. That monster truck was as well, so is Team McQueen, and I think that's it for the plastic ones. After McQueen gets unbrainwashed by Sally, Ramon quickly repaints him, creating Final Battle Lightning McQueen. Much like with Return to Radiator Springs McQueen, I tried to incorporate several different elements and color schemes of previous McQueen designs, once again with the black and red and blue and some orange sort of flames here, yellow lightning bolt on the side, and I'm really not the biggest fan of this item, of this custom. For years, I've nicknamed it Harlequin McQueen, since he just kind of looks like a jester with the color scheme there. Splitting him down the middle was cool in concept, but in execution, I don't think it worked very well. This is also a culprit of my really horrendous yellow paint, which just doesn't cover things up sometimes. Yeah, I think in universe I said that it was kind of a rush job by Ramon, because it was actually a rush job in real life. I realized very quickly, hey, McQueen should have a new paint job after he's no longer the executioner, because he's got to get back to his, back to a non-executioner paint job somehow, and so I just very quickly threw this one together. I don't know, I think if I repainted it, did another coat of paint, I could make it look a bit nicer, but I think this one is far more likely to be repurposed in the future instead of redone. Our final Cars Adventures McQueen is Multiversal Dash McQueen. While I never ended up making my Multiversal Dash fan film, I decided to keep the custom McQueen I made for it for safekeeping, just in case I ever decide to revisit the concept. And I think I am going to continue to keep this into the future, once again, just in case I ever do revisit Multiversal Dash. I really like the design here. I actually misspoke earlier when I said that Executioner McQueen was my last plastic McQueen. It's a repaint of the plastic McQueen included with the 2023 Piston Cup Wind-Up Speedway, if you couldn't already tell from the fact that it actually uses the exact same face. I kept the face there. Much like a lot of my other McQueens, I tried to make something that was familiar to the McQueen design, but also quite a bit different. He has this big purple portal design on his hood where the Rust-eze logo usually is, and he uses purple and green as accent colors throughout, once again trying to kind of look like a portal on him. Why I chose purple and green is actually pretty interesting. Purple and green are opposite colors to red and yellow on the color wheel, so I decided to use them to show that this isn't your ordinary McQueen. You know, this is kind of a weird, strange thing he's doing. It's the opposite of what you'd expect from a McQueen design, and honestly, I think the colors worked pretty well. Maybe not the green, but the purple for sure. And the final McQueen custom in the collection is Lightning Cup McQueen from Ty's Cars 4. While I absolutely love Ty's Cars 4 and all the customs I did for it, I think Lightning Cup McQueen is probably one of my least favorite Lightning Cup racer designs. He's pretty simplistic and just not as unique as some of the other items, but I do still quite like how he turned out. He was actually the first Lightning Cup racer I designed, and as such, his hood logo is a little bit different than the others. The lightning bolt is a bit thicker and longer, taking up a little bit more space. I do like what I did on the side here with the very small and kind of subtle 95s, and then this lightning bolt-esque design that splits up the two colors we see on McQueen, the red from the orange. Out of all my McQueen designs, I think this is one of the most realistic ones. I can see Disney and Pixar making a McQueen design that looks kind of similar to this. It's nothing too out of the ordinary, and I think that works for Ty's Cars 4, which was supposed to be a Cars project in line with the rest of the Cars series compared to Cars Adventures, which goes kind of beyond in strange directions. I don't have many Mater customs in my collection, partially because he's not really a character that I need new variants of for videos often, and also partially because he's an absolute pain to paint. Mater has so many small nooks and crannies and little areas you have to get into. With paint pens, it's very hard to do. Even with a brush, it would be quite difficult to reach some parts of Mater, like his back towing assembly and his engine area and all that. So it's pretty funny to me that our first Mater isn't even in a Mater mold. This is Mater in McQueen's body, another one of my deleted scene storyboard customs, and probably my all-time favorite of them, based on the iconic deleted scene from the first Cars movie, where Lightning and Mater switch bodies, or rather, Lightning and Mater switch bodies, and Lightning's body gets... Lightning becomes a bulldozer. You've seen it. It's the one where Mater goes, "I always wanted to be a race car," and as you can see, this is certainly Mater. He's very, very similar to the concept art McQueen custom, but with the big Mater teeth and a giant exaggerated smile based on a facial expression he has in one of the storyboards. Easily my favorite detail with this Mater are his eyebrows, which are placed over the eyelids. That's how he looked in those storyboards. For some reason, instead of having the eyelids also be the eyebrows, they did eyelids and then eyebrows on top of them. This is based off of one very specific storyboard, and I think after all these years, it still looks pretty great. The paint is starting to crack a little bit, but this is still one of my all-time favorite kind of joke customs in my collection. My next custom Mater is also an old one based on a Cars deleted scene. Specifically, this is Fabulous Mater, based on the deleted scene where we see Mater and Sally painted to support Lightning McQueen at the Florida 500. This is another custom that I really haven't touched in years. It's one that I would have repainted into something else, but I just simply haven't needed another Mater. He actually started his life as Tater from Aquastrike's Cars series, who, if you saw that series, you know, was simply a blue Mater repaint, and so I made my own version of the character. He's so old that he still has the silver whites of the eyes that I used to do before I had good white paint. If you've seen this Mater in my videos before, you might notice that something is missing from him here. He's supposed to have a paper 51 flag that drapes over his back, but I'm currently in the middle of reorganizing my collection, and while I usually display him with it, for whatever reason, I could not find it while recording this video. So I'll put an image of what it's supposed to look like on screen from a previous video, but yeah, it's supposed to be here, but unfortunately I'm not sure where it is right now. And just like the other storyboard cards, his face is based on a very specific storyboard. I believe, for the record, this is my final deleted scene car also. I used to have a cruise, like I mentioned earlier, but I no longer do. So I think this is it for the deleted scene cars, other than the graveyard cars, who are kind of their own thing. The final custom Mater in my collection is Protectors of Radiator Springs Mater, or Pro Mater, if you will. Get it? It's like Toe Mater, but Pro instead. It wasn't really an intentional pun, just kind of happened with the group name. Anyway, back in 2017, I repainted 3 of the 4 color changers I had as a kid. Sarge, Tex Dinoco, and Dinoco McQueen. Something that I really ended up regretting, as, well, they were simply cars in my collection that I didn't have duplicates of, and now the old color changers are super rare. I wish I hadn't done that in hindsight. A few years later, though, I also painted the last childhood color changer of mine, Brand New Mater, turning him into Pro Mater for Cars Adventures. This one, I didn't mind as much. The color changer's Mater, the old 2010 one, barely changes color, and at that point I decided, you know what? This isn't really an item that I want too much. He probably has one of my least favorite Protectors of Radiator Springs designs. Like I said before, Mater's pretty difficult to paint, and I don't know. You can see how much of him had to kind of go unpainted simply because I really couldn't reach the paint back there. But I think it works. I think having him be based on Brand New Mater also makes sense, as this is sort of a souped up, hyped up stealth Mater. In hindsight, I wish I had changed the facial expression and not just made it the regular Brand New Mater one. Maybe cut off the little additional mirror here. I don't know. This is one that I could definitely make some changes to in the future, but I think since it is based on a rarer item, that being an old color changers Mater, I'm going to try to keep it unchanged and not make any more modifications to it, I guess. I don't know. Now that we're past Lightning and Mater, it's time to move on to customs for the rest of the Radiator Springs cars, starting off with Sally. I only have one custom Sally in my collection, that, of course, being Dinoco Sally from Cars Adventures. Now, despite being a Sally variant, as you can tell, this is very clearly based off of Cruz Ramirez. In Cars Adventures, Sally became the Dinoco racer for several years of the series and ended up competing against Cruz, who ended up being sponsored by Chick Hicks. It was a whole big thing in the show for quite a while, one of the most significant plot points of all of Cars Adventures. And in order to make Sally look a bit more like a racer, I decided to repaint a Cruz into Sally, since they have kind of vaguely similar models. That was kind of my intention, and you could kind of pull this off as a Sally that's been hyper modified for her races. So in Cars Adventures, she would swap between her regular model and then this one for race episodes. That was my intention at the time. Originally, Dinoco Sally started off as Natalie Certain, who was the only vaguely Sally-looking car I had at the time. I eventually swapped over to a plastic Cruz and now a metal Cruz, which she remains to this day. Sally is no longer the Dinoco racer in Cars Adventures. Hasn't been for many, many years now, but I still do keep this custom around, and I actually repainted it into its current form back in 2021 for a flashback episode, and I still really like this design. I simply repainted it because, again, it was a flashback, so I had to make sure the design was consistent with the old one, but I still am a pretty big fan of this design, and I also like that she decided to take on the King's number when she became a racer. My race-damaged Fabulous Hudson Hornet is another item that I made because I simply don't think Mattel ever will. Using a dirt track Fabulous Hudson Hornet that I got in 2019, and I want to say the Jet Robinson 2-pack as a basis, I still think this one holds up pretty well. There are definitely far better and far more accurate damaged dot customs out there. The main thing that mine doesn't have are the dents in the mold, which I would love to do, but I don't think I could pull that off without some very precise sledgehammer movements. For my custom, I simply sanded it down and used sandpaper to scrape him and make him look all dusty and dirty, and of course also painted over his eyes. The eyes really bother me. This was an early Thailand doc, and as you can see, the eyes are actually three-dimensional pieces, kind of printed, textured on there, so he never fully looks like his eyes are closed, and the blue didn't really match up with Doc all that perfectly. This is one that I could definitely make a bit more movie accurate if I try it again nowadays, but just like with Race Damage McQueen, for its purpose, just sitting there on my shelf because Mattel didn't make it, I think it's just fine. It's time to move on to Ramon, one of my all-time favorite characters to collect. I currently have 2 custom Ramones in the collection, both of them being based on Ties Cars 4. Up first here, we have Lightning Cup Ramon, who's painted to look like McQueen's Lightning Cup design. This is a paint job we see Ramon wear for the bulk of Ties Cars 4 at all the different races and everything, and I absolutely love how it turned out, and I think it really holds up and still looks really, really great. Yellow and Pink Ramon is another custom that I absolutely love, also coming from Ties Cars 4. To make this variant, I wanted to use colors that hadn't been used on Ramon before. So I initially decided on black and pink, no relation to the K-pop band. Eventually, I decided I wanted some brighter colors, so I swapped out the black for yellow and started painting, and I really, really like how this guy looks. I don't know what happened. Looks like he has several dents or chips here on the side, which I have to fix. So we're just going to have him face this way because it doesn't have dents and looks much nicer. Just like with Lightning Cup Ramon, I'm really proud of this design, and they're both designs that I could honestly see Disney doing something similar to in the future. I always love when I can say I think that my custom looks like a design that they might consider for a real character, and I think that this is honestly a case of that. I think this looks like a very realistic Ramon color scheme, using many typical details, combination of colors, stripes, the kind of blending here with the pink and then the yellow. I really, really like this one. And the fun thing with this Ramon is that since it's just a generic paint job and not one based on a specific event like the Lightning Cup one is, I could just use this in regular videos. I've put this in Cars Adventures as Ramon's paint job for the episode before, and I really like that. This makes me want to paint more Ramones in the future. Up next, we have one custom based on Sarge. This is Golden Honor Sarge from Cars Adventures. This custom has gone through quite a few forms over the years, and he was used in several Cars Adventures flashback episodes for Sarge's time in the military. He's based on a wheel-action driver Sarge, as you can tell. Another item that I wish I hadn't repainted. I repainted several of my wheel-action drivers and my plastic color changers many, many years ago when I was first starting painting cars. I wish I had just gone out and gotten another Sarge to make into this one instead of repainting one I only had one of, but whatever, here we are. This Sarge has stuck with me for many, many years. Another item that I probably would have repainted by now, but I simply didn't have another use for it, so he stayed in the collection. The point here is that Sarge was supposed to have been honored for his military service and thus given special silver and gold paint to wear to showcase his achievements. And he could also do karate kicks. Yeah, there we go. Go, Sarge. Patrick Pace is kind of the premier Cars Adventures original character. In the early days of the series, I wanted to make my very own Radiator Springs Townie character to add to the group, so I created Patrick Pace, who was introduced as an old army pal of Sarge's and a new police officer for the town of Radiator Springs to replace Sheriff, who was getting old. Since then, Patrick and Sheriff have worked together as the two police officers of Radiator Springs on several occasions, and we've seen a whole lot of Patrick all throughout Cars Adventures. This is actually the second Patrick Pace. We'll take a look at the first in just a minute. I got this guy in late 2022 as a replacement/variant for the original. If his light bar looks like it's at a bit of a strange angle, I do apologize. It's not glued down. I have two Patricks and only one light bar. The other one went missing. It'll pop up every once in a while, and like I said when I was talking about Mater, I'm currently in the middle of reorganizing my whole collection, so I do hope to find the missing light bar soon. But currently the new Patrick is wearing the old Patrick's light bar, and we kind of have to swap between the two of them. As you can see, I really like Patrick's design here, the RSPD for Radiator Springs Police Department, and a nice stern fitting expression. But easily my favorite detail about Patrick is an Easter egg on his base. In one episode of Cars Adventures back in 2018, Patrick Pace is attacked by Miss Fritter and gets this huge scar on his base. This was a detail that I had on the original Patrick, as you can see, so I made sure to incorporate it when I redid him more recently. This right here is the original Patrick Pace. About a year and a half after I made him, in the summer of 2019, I repainted him into Protectors of Radiator Springs Patrick Pace. And he stayed in that paint job for several years until I bought a new Patrick in late 2022 that I made into the new regular Patrick, and now these two have been swapped out depending on the plotline ever since. This Patrick is the one that the light bar comes from. It's part of this guy right here. This is a made in China Charlie Checker, which you could tell if you look closely because despite being a Charlie Checker from all the way in 2018, he actually still has raised eyebrows. He has purple RSPD logos and Protector logos all over him, and I think he still holds up pretty good, although the current Patrick is definitely much better. But again, when I do Protectors or Radiator Spring stuff, I bring this one in. Now that we're done with the Radiator Springs residents, let's move into Radiator Springs visitors, cars that have popped in and out of the town over the years. Up first, we have a few of my Cars the video game variants. In early 2018, I made a whole set of these, and a few of them still survive to this day, such as El Guapo here. At the time, this was a very intricate custom for me to make, and was, I believe, one of the first times I ever used a thin Sharpie for additional details. This is another item that I think would look significantly better if I did it today, although I do think that it still looks pretty alright for a custom that I made all the way back in 2018. This was my plastic color changers text Dynaco that I mentioned earlier on while talking about Pro Mater. This is his fate currently. This is one that I think I honestly would like to redo at some point in the future. He could certainly use some nice updates. Oh, and I painted the base gold because I thought that would be fitting. Emma from Cars Mater National is a character that I originally made for my Cars McQueen's Team movie using a spare Raul Cerul. And I think for an item I made all the way back in the summer of 2018, this one still really holds up. My only complaints would be the blue from Raul that's kind of exposed here in some areas, and also the pink paint, which unfortunately is starting to crack. But other than that, I think this is still a pretty good looking custom. One that I don't think I'll be revisiting. Ooh, the license plate looks rough. Okay. One that I don't think I'll be revisiting, but maybe I'll replace it in the future. Emma from Mater National looks a whole lot like Cho from Tokyo Mater, and Cho was just re-released this year for 2025. I actually saw her in a store just a few days back. I may end up buying a duplicate Cho and reviewing her on the channel, then turning her into a more accurate Emma custom. Only time will tell. Remember how I said that my pink paint tends to crack? Well, Candace from Cars Racerama is a prime example of that. This isn't looking too good. It looks far worse on camera than it does off camera, unfortunately. But yeah, Candace here has certainly seen better days. I've seen a lot of people debate what model should be used for repaints of Candace. Honestly, I'm not entirely sure what the right one would be. I think maybe Cruz. I almost want to say Corey Turbowitz if you modify the model a bit, sand some parts down, maybe add or remove some parts, use some clay. I don't know, but in hindsight, I don't think Natalie Certain was the best choice for her. In case you were wondering, this Natalie Certain used to be the original Dynaco Sally back in the day. I don't know what I'm going to do with it. I'm just going to keep it in my collection for now. It's not the most accurate. Maybe one day I'll try to do a more accurate Candace, but for now, she'll just sit on my shelf. Maybe the least I could do is give her a new coat of paint. Up next, we move into Radiator Springs visitors from Cars Adventures. This right here is Tony Track, a famous paint store owner who's tried to work with Ramon on several occasions. He originally was made and appeared back in 2018 using a spare Greta that I got from the Jonas Rivera 3-pack, and in 2021, I brought him back into the series, repainting him to fit my modern style of customs, and that is the paint job you see him in still to this day. Tony Track is a fun character, kind of an obscure pick from the Cars Adventure series, but one that I would like to use again in the future. If you watch Cars Adventures, you no doubt recognize this background character, but you probably don't know his name. The green pickup truck has been a background character in Cars Adventures for many years now, with several background and speaking appearances all throughout the series, typically appearing in Radiator Springs. But throughout all of these appearances, he has never, ever been given a name, and it's kind of become a running joke with the character behind the scenes and in my comments. In an early Cars Randomness episode, I asked people to name the character, and I never ended up picking any of the names, and now it's just kind of stuck that this guy doesn't have a name. Based on a plastic Smokey with the cap sanded down, this was actually painted by my sister, who wanted to do her own custom several years ago, and now the green pickup truck has stayed this way ever since. He's also stayed nameless ever since. Poor guy. Up next, we have Tater, based on the character from Aquastrike's Cars series. Earlier on in the video, I mentioned that my Fabulous Mater custom was originally Tater, and he was one of 2 Taters in my collection, the other one being this one. Now, I know what you're thinking. Yes, this is a Precision Series Mater. I probably shouldn't have repainted it, but I ordered it online back in 2017 when the Precision Series was still out and super common, and it broke almost immediately. The tow cable snapped off, retreated all the way inside Mater, and I had to order a new one, which is the Precision Series Mater you see in so many of my videos nowadays. I eventually repurposed the broken Precision Series Mater into Tater, and since this is a broken item, I really haven't touched it since. You can see the paint is inconsistent. There's like really weird globbiness on the eyebrows. I'm not a fan of this one, but it's just kind of a sitting duck. Like, there's nothing I can do with it. It's a broken item. So yeah, as broken Precision Series Tater, it stays. Cool. New lore drop, guys. In Cars Adventures, this character's full name is going to be Channing Tater. Okay, next. Brody Pace, Patrick Pace's famous off-road racing brother, has visited Radiator Springs on a few occasions throughout the Cars Adventures series. This item originally started off as an XRS Mud Racer Cruise that I bought to repaint into a Chicks Picks XRS Mud Racer Cruise. You see, when the XRS cars were coming out, Cruise was still racing for Chick Hicks in Cars Adventures, so I bought a second of her to repaint into a Chick Hicks sponsored version instead of a Dynaco sponsored version. But when Cruise ended up having her redemption arc and started racing for Dynaco again, I no longer needed that custom. I didn't even use it in Cars Adventures because I didn't end up adapting the XRS, and I turned it into its own character with Brody Pace here, who you can see does reuse Cruise's facial expression. I just painted over it. Brody is supposed to have little guardrails on the side, which I ripped off of his body to paint more thoroughly, but unfortunately they do tend to get lost and go missing. So there have been several times over the years where Brody has appeared, and I only film him from one side or just kind of ignore the fact that the guardrails are gone. As you can see, they currently aren't on him. But like all the XRS Mud Racers, he does still have that fun suspension, and I really do like his color scheme and design, one that I might do some touch-ups of too soon since the blue is sort of fading a bit, but one that I'm definitely not going to redesign anytime soon. Ricky Radial is a background character originally created for the Radiator Springs scenes of Ties Cars 4. A repaint of Dusty, his faded blue look ended up blending really well with Dusty's rusty design, making this a really interesting kind of faded blue beaten up look. In the film, he was voiced by DCC Sodor, going by BGM Reviews at the time, who delivered a really funny performance for Ricky's lines. He's simply a background character that goes to Flo's asking for some tires, to which Flo tells him obviously they don't serve tires. Ricky seems to understand, but then goes on to ask her for snow tires instead. Despite Ties Cars 4 and Cars Adventures not being canon to each other, I started using a lot of background characters from Ties Cars 4 in Cars Adventures, and Ricky Radial has become a pretty frequent Radiator Springs visitor throughout the series ever since, continuing his joke from Ties Cars 4 where he simply never understands what each store of Radiator Springs is for. Up next, we have the greatest Radiator Springs visitor of all time, the New Car, based on the terrible Cars book that I wrote as a child, McQueen and the New Car. I combined several different drawings of this character because he was very inconsistent all throughout, and turned them into this custom based on a McQueen with this giant cape, this strange orange logo on the hood, and usually he has a massive paper mustache and goatee, which are taped on, but I'm currently in the process of making him a new mustache, since the previous one was very unstable and fell off several times while I was filming my McQueen and the New Car Diecast remake. So pretty soon, he'll be back to full evilness once again. I absolutely love this custom. It's so funny. It's a really fun one, I think. I love the huge cape and the big paper pieces, and I'm very excited because this guy's never been on my shelf before, and since I am currently redoing my collection, he's gonna have a nice spot with the Radiator Springs visitors, which I think is so funny. Now, our next few items are also kind of Radiator Springs adjacent. They're part of my highway car section. The graveyard cars are up next. 5 car corpses based on the dead car bodies we see in the Lost Deleted scene and the Radiator Springs 500.5, made out of a wide variety of broken, mangled cars, usually plastic cars. This used to be my 2010 Color Changers Dinoco McQueen, who I took apart and removed the mouth plate, making it look like he has this broken, jagged, crooked, rusted teeth mouth on the inside. I think this is one of the best of my graveyard cars. It was the first one. It's gotten a little bit dusty thanks to all this string on it. The green string was supposed to represent grass or vines that have kind of overgrown on the cars. He's missing his back wheels. And how I pulled off these front wheels is something that I'm still really proud of to this day. You see how far they're sticking out? If you were to open this McQueen, actually, you would see that this is actually 2 wheels and this is also 2 wheels. Yeah, I stuck both of the car sets of axles here at the front. So the other wheels are actually stuck inside the back of McQueen's mouth here, kind of keeping it propped up in a weird way and also making the tires kind of stick out more, stick out longer, and also letting him not keep the back wheels there. So yeah, a lot going on with this guy. He also has a little string that connects it to a cardboard tree and gravestone that I made at the time. We also have graveyard car number 2, who I think is the other best one, although it seems his string has seen better days. This was based on a wheel action driver's dock, who I kind of mangled and broke with the whole wheel mechanic, and again, the mouth kind of broken off there. This dock was previously a gold statue dock custom that I had made, and yeah, I painted it all black, so it kind of looks rusty and faded over time. We then have Graveyard Car over 3, who used to be Dinoco from Cars Adventures until, unfortunately, one day he broke. This was a Color Changers Team RS Lightning McQueen. And yeah, his mouth plate is hanging off and he's all broken and such. And then we get into Graveyard Car 4. This one, I believe, had a previous life as 00. And you can see this one actually never received the string vines. And this one actually still has the weight in it that plastic cars have. The same is true for Graveyard Car number 5, who I'm not a very big fan of. I actually wasn't displaying him with the rest of my graveyard cars. This one actually just stays in my box of duplicates usually, but I did have this on my list of customs, so I wanted to include it. This is Graveyard Car number 5, which used to be a race damaged Jackson Storm. I think one day I'm going to repurpose this. Like I said before, it just sits in my duplicate box. It's not on display. Yeah, once again, doesn't have the vines. Is probably going to be repurposed maybe for a back car somewhere in the future. But those are all 5 of the graveyard cars. Up next, we have a fan favorite Cars Adventures character, the Mystery Racer. Introduced in Lap 2 Season 4 in the summer of 2020, this character is a mysterious racer who travels all around the world, challenging different racers to races in different extreme conditions. Lightning is approached by her and races her. Eventually he beats her and asks her to tell him her backstory. She reveals that her name is Courtney Muffler, and many years ago she auditioned to be the Octane Gain racer, but a terrible accident that happened during the audition caused her to not get the part, and now she travels the world challenging other racers. The Mystery Racer was so well loved by my audience that I even tried to give her her own spin-off series at one point, but I canceled it after a few episodes when I wasn't too proud of how it was turning out. She is, of course, a repaint of a Road Trip McQueen that I got when I bought the 3-pack of him, Minnie, and Van. I was inspired by the design of that McQueen and the fact that I was working on a vacation season at the time to create the character. Recently, after several years of not appearing in the series, Mystery Racer returned and is being used in the latest 2 Cars Adventures seasons. Currently, she's partaking in the Route 66 Dash, and in the season before this, she was part of a racing event that Boost entered. Here we have the Flashback Mystery Racer, who uses a plastic Cars 3 Lightning McQueen as her basis, fitting as her regular design is based on a Route 66 Road Trip Lightning McQueen. She auditioned for the Octane Gain Racer, as you can see here, and uses a purple and orange color scheme. The implication was that Bobby Swift was kind of painted in her honor after her accident at the audition, which led to Bobby Swift getting the job as the Octane Gain Racer. This is a plastic car that's been in my collection for quite a long time. It started out its life as Fade-In in Cars Adventures, who infamously had a very dangerous crash, and Courtney here, Courtney Muffler, real name of the mystery racer, also had a pretty dangerous crash. As you can see, this car is completely unscrewed, doesn't have the little plastic weight inside of it, and is built to come apart and have disastrous consequences. Up next, we move into my personal favorite section of the collection, Around the World. This is where I keep all the different characters we see in all the different locations across the Cars series. From Tokyo, Paris, Italy, England, and even some places in the US like Thomasville in Cars 3 and beyond. I absolutely love adding cars to this section of my collection, but it doesn't really have all that many customs in it because so many of these international characters are background characters and as such can fulfill multiple different purposes in my series. But we do have quite a few, especially in Tokyo. Probably my favorite location in the Cars series. I absolutely love the Tokyo background characters, and we're starting off here with a new Tokyo background character I made for Ties Cars 4. This is Akio. Originally repainted from Asuki, I thought it would be a really cool idea if, when they went to Tokyo in Ties Cars 4, I made my very own car to join the group of Suki, Chisaki, Harumi, and Ichigo, these iconic Japanese background characters from the Cars tunes in Cars 2. They were re-released in 2021 when I was filming Ties Cars 4, and I thought, I think it'd be super cool to add my own, so I created Akio. I really wanted to do some sort of goth design similar to Chisaki. I've always, as an artist, found sort of goth style really fun to draw, so I gave her the dark makeup and the black lipstick. The rest isn't very goth. Honestly, a lot of her does look pretty similar to Suki. When I showed her off on live streams before the film came out, my audience quickly nicknamed her Hot Topic Suki, and my friend Robin Tailsfighter later came up with the official name Akio. By the time I filmed Ties Cars 4, I made sure to give Akio a line since she had become a fan favorite custom on my live streams at that point, and I believe I've also snuck her into Cars Adventures on a few occasions as part of a band Chisaki used to be in. These next two customs are two of my most recent ones, both from Yojimbo's gang in Cars Adventures, introduced in 2024. This group includes a combination of tuner characters I hadn't used in Cars Adventures yet, and brand new custom characters to add to the ranks, with one of the most significant ones in the series being this guy right here, the Carrier. A repaint of a spare Wingo Robin Tailsfighter sent me last year with the intention of me customizing it. I cut off the spoiler to make this guy look a little bit less like Wingo, and I'm a really big fan of this design. He has these red sunglass shades covering up his eyes, and a really unique color scheme that's asymmetrical, something I was very excited about when I painted it. As you can see, much more of him is orange than is red and black. I had a design here on his hood, kind of inspired by Manji's paint job. And yeah, I'm a pretty big fan of this design, and I know a lot of my viewers really liked this character in the series as well, and we're going to see a bit more of him when Cars Adventures returns in a couple of months. He's called a Carrier because he takes people to Yojimbo, the boss of a very dangerous gang that the tuners are currently up against. This Harumi repaint is also a member of Yojimbo's gang, and she actually hasn't been named in the series just yet. I'm not exactly sure what I'm going to call her. I'm going to pick another Japanese name, just like I did with Akio, but we'll have to wait and see whenever that ends up happening. I really liked using unique colors on this character, much like the Ties Cars 4 Ramon I talked about earlier. I looked at the other characters that use the Suki model and made sure to use colors that aren't really used on them. So she ended up with this dark blue color scheme. I really like the black lines here that kind of look like her makeup is running. We have just kind of this runny design all throughout with the black here and also the blue here. I didn't want to have a Patrick Pace situation on my hands where, the top part had to be removed and couldn't be reattached. So I decided to make part of her top just the original color of Harumi, as you can see. One of her wheels is painted in black here, just a bit of variety. What happened there? I don't know. And probably my favorite detail with this item is the eyes. As you can see, I gave her 2 little dots of eye shine instead of the usual one to reflect the more anime style of these background characters, and I also gave her heterochromia, the condition where you have 2 different eye colors. Just a unique thing to add to the character design. I'm very excited to show more of this character in the future and give her a name. Moving into Italy, we have one of my all-time favorite customs, Giuseppe Aguilo. This is a pretty simplistic design. It's simply a Luigi repainted in light blue with silver accents, but I absolutely love how it turned out. And I also absolutely adore the character I created for Cars Adventures. This guy right here is Giuseppe Aguilo, a rival tire creator to Luigi, and he and Luigi constantly send each other prank tires back and forth, trying to trick the other. We haven't seen Giuseppe Aguilo in quite a while in Cars Adventures, but the episodes he appeared in 2020 and 2021 are among my all-time favorite in the series. He's such a fun character, and I'd really love to use him again soon. I've also gotten requests to give him a sidekick, a yellow Guido, since this is a blue Luigi, and I will say, while it is pretty funny, Giuseppe Aguilo being blue wasn't actually supposed to be a reference to Guido. I think some people saw it and was like, oh, he's blue because Guido's blue and Luigi is yellow, and that's kind of the opposite. That wasn't the intention, but it would be pretty funny to incorporate a yellow Luigi, or sorry, a yellow Guido to be his sidekick. Maybe in the future. Rock Hudson here is a background character created for Ties Cars 4. Another repaint of dirt track fabulous Hudson Hornet. He was voiced in the film by world-renowned Turbo Tractor. Now, Rock Hudson was the name of a famous actor back in the day, but this guy isn't actually supposed to be a reference to that. In fact, his full name is Dwayne The Rock Hudson. Thank you for asking. He's simply an orange Doc repaint with a gold grille, meant to be a background character, and I believe I've used him in Cars Adventures on a few occasions as well. From Ties Cars 4, we have the Road Dents, a gang that cause trouble and act as sort of secondary antagonists for the film. This is their leader, Ali Way. Then we have Chip, Dent, Scuff, and Scrape. I really like how all these characters came out and how they all kind of work together as a gang. They're based on a biker gang, painted all black with sort of silver highlights and studs to make it look like they're all sort of leather jackets. Alleyway is probably my personal favorite. She's also easily my favorite in terms of character. Really like the design and just the character in general. She was actually originally supposed to have a little paper bandana, but I didn't end up doing that. Then for the rest of these guys, they're all based on sort of old or beaten up car models. It was pretty hard to find good beaten up car models that were out at the time when I was making this in early 2021. So that's why a lot of them are just kind of miscellaneous Demolition Derby repaints. But honestly, I think it really, really works. I'm a big fan of these characters. I didn't get to use them all that much in Ties Cars 4, but one thing that I love about them is that I completely hid them from the build-up to the movie. I didn't show anything regarding these guys. They weren't in trailers or posters or anything. They were completely secret characters. And while they weren't in the movie all that much, I ended up giving them a much bigger role when I brought them into the Cars Adventures continuity, and I also had them in the background of Batcar for a little bit as a gang for Batcar to fight. Hope to use these guys again in the future. Up next, we have the Redline Agents, the henchmen of Rod Torque Redline in my Cars Redline movie, and more recently, Cars Adventures. These guys last appeared in Cars Adventures Lap 2 Season 15, and halfway through that season, I decided to redesign all of them. Originally, they were painted all black with a number in a color on the side, but I updated them to instead have a little band of color with the number written in black. A lot of these guys are very work in progress right now, as that was a very spur-of-the-moment decision while I was filming that season, so not all of them received the update. You can see that some of them are kind of halfway done, some still have the older design, and Agent 1333, who's painted green, is just nowhere to be found. Guys, I swear, I searched for him for an hour. I turned my entire room upside down. I could not find the stupid green Redline Agent, but here he is on screen right now. This is what he is supposed to look like. I assume that he got lost at some point while I was working on repainting him or something like that, but don't worry, I will find him soon. Just wanted to make sure he was still included in the video here. I also have another Redline Agent along the way who's going to have blue stripes. All these guys were brainwashed spies. They all used the Sterling mold to kind of make them look like a uniform army, but with these different color stripes. The head agent here is 1616. He used to have blue stripes, but for Cars Adventures, I updated them to gold as he is the head agent. Then again, after him in the collection goes 1333, who we don't have right now, and then 9546. Now, for some reason, currently, I have 2 Redline agents who are number 9546. Guys, I don't know what happened. I don't know how I made this mistake, but turns out that this purple guy is actually supposed to be Agent 1138, which is a Star Wars reference, as I'm sure some of you may have picked up on. And then this guy, the original 9546, is supposed to remain 9546. This guy right here is 406, but you can't tell that because his number is currently missing and has to be added on. But easily my favorite detail about him is the fact that this is actually a factory error Sterling. One of this Sterling's eyes when I got him was not painted properly, and so I made sure to keep that when I repainted him. And finally, we have 2319, Monsters Inc. reference, of course, and yeah, he's not painted on one side. So absolute mess. This is why I don't review work in progress customs for this video. Really, the only one that's fully done is 1616, and maybe this guy who is a mistake, but yeah, I still wanted to show them anyway, because they're so iconic to the channel. And I didn't want to just show 1616 when there are so many, even if the others aren't done. Well, several other Redline related customs are currently work in progress, including some Redline security and a few other agents. This pity right here is fully completed. Redline Pity W305. It's a green pity, which in the Redline redesign means that it's a weapons expert pity. There were going to be different colors for different members of the Redline crew, other than the agents. All the agents have different colors to differentiate them, but amidst the crew, they were going to have different colors. So green here was going to be weapons experts. I believe this one did make it into Cars Adventures for a bit, and you'll see it when the Redline stuff returns alongside some other crew members. So yeah, this one obviously is a Millie repaint. Really great because Millie is completely blank. I do have the vacuum cleaner, but you know, that's not part of the custom here. That's not part of this one. That's just what came with Millie, so kind of a bonus I could do whatever I want with. Moving on to my racers, we have Cars 3 Chick Hicks. This isn't really fully a custom, it's not repainted or anything, but it is modified from its original counterpart. I simply cut a headset off of a Cars 3 Chick Hicks with headset, since in the movie Chick Hicks never wears his headset, and with the exception of a plastic item and really rare rubber tires diecast, we've never gotten it in diecast form. I did this all the way back in early 2018, which is actually before that rubber tires Cars 3 Chick came out anyway, and I've used it as the primary Chick for videos where I need him ever since. If you've been keeping up with Project 10K, then you just saw him in my segments of the Search for Bruiser movie. This isn't, again, fully a custom. I guess it's customized, but, you know, it's not a repaint. But I did include it in my original custom mega review back in 2019, so I thought I should put it here again. The credit scene for Cars Redline features Chick Hicks getting brainwashed by Rod Torque Redline to join the Redline army that we saw just a few minutes ago. Chick Hicks would then not appear in Cars Adventures for a good, 3 or 4 years until finally returning in Lap 3, Season 14, now with this brand new design as Head Agent 86, working under Rod Redline. When he first appeared, he had green stripes, but when I went and redesigned the rest of the Redline agents, he got gold stripes, just like the other head agent 1616, who we took a look at just a few minutes ago. It's a pretty simplistic custom, but one that I do quite like. Out of all the weird, crazy storylines from early Cars Adventures that I had to bring back in the modern day to work on and continue to incorporate in the series, I think the brainwashed enemies thing is one of the best things I've adapted, and I'm very interested to show Chick Hicks again. He was actually supposed to get unbrainwashed in Lap 2, Season 15, but I simply ran out of time in the season. It didn't really make sense at the time because we were also doing the McQueen brainwashing plotline with the Executioner, and doing 2 at once just didn't really work out. So now Chick Hicks is still evil, still working for Rod, and hopefully someday they could free him. We'll have to wait and see. Chick Hicks' Lightning Cup design from Ties Cars 4 is one of my all-time favorite racer customs. While his paint has unfortunately become a little bit faded over the years, as a lot of my green painted cars tend to do, I don't know what it is, it's just something with my green paint that tends to get faded. This is still really an all-time favorite design of mine. I absolutely love the grid pattern that he has all throughout. If I were to have any criticisms of it, there are definitely some parts where I should have measured out the grid pattern and, I don't know, maybe brought a ruler there or something to make the lines a bit straighter. Well, it looks good here and pretty good here. The front does have some sort of messier areas. I don't really know what inspired me to do the grid pattern, but I think just having a blank color Chick Hicks looks kind of weird because we're so used to him being full of all the stickers. So I wanted to do something, some sort of design that would carry over all across him to make the design a bit more busy, and I'm really happy with this one and how it turned out. In all honesty, I'm kind of disappointed that I don't really have any other videos where I could use the Ties Cars 4 Lightning Cup customs. Cars like this, as much as I love them, just kind of sit around and collect dust on my shelf these days. So happy to take it out to review, but now it's got to go back on the shelf. Lightning Cup the King started off his life as self-sponsored the King from Cars Adventures. In 2018, I did a storyline in the series where the King returns to the Piston Cup with a silver and blue paint job, and he sponsors himself. I knew that I wanted the King to return in Ties Cars 4 and the Lightning Cup, and so I had to say goodbye to that custom, and it was honestly one that I contemplated not parting ways with, since it was pretty significant to the early days of Cars Adventures. But since the King is no longer around in Cars Adventures, I decided it would be perfectly fine to repaint it into a Lightning Cup custom. The funny thing is, in the early trailers for Ties Cars 4, this King actually has a completely different design. He was originally blue and gold, but I really didn't like that color combination, so I replaced the blue with black, with just a couple of blue stripes and highlights all throughout, and I think the final product ended up being a pretty good one. Definitely quite different than the King's usual looks, but I really like how this color scheme ended up. So many Lightning Cup racers try to incorporate gold or other McQueen adjacent colors like reds and oranges and yellow, so I think that works for the King. Francesco Bernoulli is a pretty hard character to redesign because there's simply not all that much surface area to work with for him. For his Lightning Cup design, I simply changed up where the red and white and green went on him, adding some red and green in a few new and different places. I think it looks pretty fine, but on my shelf it does kind of blend in with the rest of the Francescos, in all honesty. Still a fun design, I think, and one that does fit, as oftentimes diecast variants we get from Mattel of cars like the World Grand Prix racers don't change all that much. Lightning Cup Jeff Gorvette started out his life as a custom for my McQueen's Team movie. I was never a big fan of that design, so when it was time for me to do Ties Cars 4, I simply repainted Jeff. I didn't get another Jeff, I just repainted the one that I'd previously used for that older movie, and I really, really like the Lightning Cup Jeff design. I was actually inspired by some real-world cars that Jeff Gorvette drove, which had sort of this orange flame going on the hood, and I thought it would work perfectly for a Jeff inspired by McQueen. I still kept yellow and blue as prominent colors, and yeah, I think it all comes together to be one of the best looking Lightning Cup racers. The only problem, in my opinion, is that facial expression, but with Jeff's mouth, it's really hard to give him a face that isn't just an angry one. Something that we saw on the 2025 poster is going to be an issue with an official Jeff this year with the Race and Rescue one. Seems like they had that problem too. And you might be thinking, oh, why not just paint over the mouth and draw your own one on? Jeff's mouth is pretty textured and detailed and big, so you can't really do that. You are kind of stuck with this weird mouth. In hindsight, I should have just given him an angry face. Lewis Hamilton is another character that I feel is kind of difficult to redesign. Typically, official variants of him keep the whole middle part as is, and then just kind of change up the sides, like this ice racer here. That's what I decided to do for his Lightning Cup variant as well, with the exception of adding the LC logo there to his hood. He's one of very few racers to not have that written on in black. It's in yellow as to not clash with the already darker colors on the rest of Lewis. I'm not the biggest fan of this one. It's another one where it doesn't look all that different from the main one, especially from the front. You can't really tell, other than the addition of some yellow, that this is a special variant that I did of him. I kept his face the same. I kept a lot of his coloring the same because I simply don't have paint that matches the color of Lewis, so I couldn't give him a new facial expression or anything. What I did give him, though, was a lot of yellow and orange representing McQueen, as well as a sort of flame-inspired design that his 2 is on either side. And I like how that orange stripe carries down and then becomes this little flame down here. Moving into the Cars 3 racers, we have a whole lot more customs to get through now, simply because I have a whole lot more duplicate Cars 3 racers. Starting off with Cal Weathers, Cal is one of my all-time favorite Cars characters, and I actually have 4 different customs for him. Up first, we have Race Damage Cal Weathers, part of a set of Race Damage customs that I did back around 2018 or so. And let me just say, I think that this custom still really holds up. His axles are all bent, he's all sanded down, he's squinting, and he has a bunch of dirt and scrapes, and my favorite detail on all of these damage customs, little smears of other colors of paint, implying that he crashed into some other racers and they kind of, got their paint smeared on his sides. I think this is still a pretty good looking one that I haven't repurposed because it still looks pretty alright, and also because what can I repurpose this car into? He's all wrecked. Like, what else could I use with this? Maybe a new graveyard car, but I'm not making those anymore. So yeah, Race Damage Cal Weathers. While I really like this one, I do think some of the other Race Damage customs are a bit better. Team LM Cal Weathers started his life as a variant of Cal made for my movie Hey Cal 2, The Next Race. Specifically, this was LA Speedway Cal, his look for the big finale of the movie. When that movie ended up being cancelled, I kept this custom around, and I liked its design so much that I decided to repurpose it for my McQueen's Team movie in the summer of 2018. I just updated the sides a bit to say Team LM number 42, and he still stayed to this day. While most of the Team LM customs were repurposed for Lightning Cup customs in Ties Cars 4, I still kept this Cal because I really like this design here with the black, blue, and silver. Have these cool blue windows, and I was really proud at the time that I outlined the whole Dynaco logo. That variant went on to inspire Redline Cal Weathers, the first of several racers we'll see from my Cars Redline movie who painted themselves in McQueen-inspired looks when they went to go and rescue him. I don't think this custom has aged super well, especially with the eyes. This was one of the first ever customs I tried my current eye shine method on, and I don't know, the little dots in the eyes are just a little bit too bright. These colors don't work the best on Cal in my opinion, but it does really make him stand out in my shelf, and it's another item that I like so much, I never repurposed it. A lot of the Lightning Cup cars were made out of repurposed items from McQueen's Team or from Redline, but for Cal, I decided to keep his looks from both of those movies, keep him around, because I really like Cal, and I really like these two designs. Most of the Redline racers were at one point repurposed into something else in my collection since I simply didn't really like them or have a need for them anymore. You will see one or two that have survived over the years, but most of them got reused. For example, Lightning Cup Cal from Ties Cars 4 actually started out his life as a Redline variant of Cars 3 Dirksen D'Agostino, who I had a duplicate of at the time due to purchasing a multi-pack. Since I didn't want to reuse the Cals that I made in my other movies since I like their designs too much, I turned to another car of Cal's model and turned that into his Lightning Cup design. He's one of the more simplistic Lightning Cup designs. If I had to rank them, he'd probably be more towards the bottom of the list, but I do like what I was trying to do here with the red to represent McQueen, and instead of having a fading design, something that would be difficult for me to do with my paint pens, I had the first half here be light blue, the back half be dark blue, and have this even darker blue dividing line down the middle. The Team LM diecast for Bobby Swift turned into his Lightning Cup diecast as well, with very few changes. Bobby here is easily the car that underwent the least amount of changes between his two designs, and I think that this one still turned out pretty well. Bobby Swift is another personal favorite character of mine, one that I honestly think is pretty underrated, so I love being able to keep a custom of him in my collection based on Ties Cars 4, a movie that I made to kind of showcase, the history of the Cars characters. And I picked racers from each Cars movie to join the Lightning Cup based on their interactions with McQueen. And so I like that I have this custom that cements that, Bobby was a pretty important friend to McQueen. Brick Yardley wasn't originally supposed to be a part of the Lightning Cup in Ties Cars 4. He wasn't supposed to be in it at all. He was considered, but I soon dropped him from the project since he and Lightning don't really interact all that much in Cars 3. We, as the Cars fanbase, group him in alongside Cal and Bobby as all good friends, and that's for good reason. A lot of early Cars 3 material does as well. He's in the Cars 3 video game. I've seen Cars 3 books that group him in with Cal and Bobby, and again, McQueen does react clearly with a sense of knowing who Brick is when we see Brick get fired. But originally, since they don't really interact all that much in the movie itself, I wasn't going to include Brick. I eventually changed my mind and decided to include him, and I'm glad I did, since the running joke between Jeff and Brick having the same number is something that I still think is one of the most memorable parts of Ties Cars 4. Like several of the customs we've been looking at, Brick reuses his design from my Cars McQueen's Team movie. Redline Jimmy Cables is one of very few Redline variants that I still have in my collection. At the time, Jimmy Cables was a very rare item. He was only out in a few multi-packs. I actually got my duplicate of him from the same multi-pack that I got that Dirksen from, who became a Redline Dirksen and then later a Redline Cal Weathers. As far as the Redline variants go, this is easily one of my least favorites, and in all honesty, I don't know why I kept it over all of these years. I think it's mainly because Jimmy Cables was a very rare item at the time. He was, of course, re-released as a single in 2021, but back in 2018, when I made this custom, I wanted to keep as much of the original Jimmy as possible, hence why so much of him is the exact same, and I also just never repainted him because, again, it was a pretty rare item at the time. Nowadays, I probably would repaint this, although, in all honesty, there aren't many videos where I need repainted veteran racers, so that's kind of why he stuck around for so long. Redline Ernie Gearson is the only other surviving Redline veteran racer, and he's one of my personal favorites. I think it's pretty fun that I replaced the Spearmint logo with the Find Him writing that is apparent on all of the Redline racers, since they were teaming up to try to find a captured McQueen. Other than that, he really isn't all that different, except for this additional green part, which actually carries onto his hood for a little bit, which I think is a fun little detail. I really have no purpose to keep this item, but like I said with the Jimmy Cable section, Cars 3 Ernie Gearson is one of the less common veteran racers, and also I really don't have anything to repaint him into right now. So for now, this Ernie is going to stay as is, since, again, not really much I can do with him. And fun fact, I actually got this duplicate Ernie from the Dan Garcia multi-pack back in the day, and I actually keep the flyer for that up as part of my wall. So this Ernie Gearson is now this Ernie Gearson. Cruz Ramirez has had a lot of different looks over the years in Cars Adventures. Early on in the series, she became a sponsored racer for Chicks Picks with Chick Hicks after being fired by Dynaco and replaced by Sally. Chicks Picks Cruz was for years just a repaint of regular non-racer Cruz, and while I no longer have that custom because I turned it into a background character for Ties Cars 4, I do still have a mini racer that I made at the time that captures what that Cruz design looked like. If you watched early Cars Adventures, I'm sure you remember that one. It was around for several years. But eventually, in 2019, I got a duplicate of Fireball Beach Racer Cruz from a multi-pack and turned her into a new updated Chicks Picks Cruz. When the Cruz Racing for Chick Hicks storyline was over and Cruz went through her redemption arc, she became a talk show host for a time, giving us Talk Show Cruz, one of my all-time favorite customs. I absolutely love this design. This is a repaint of that second incarnation of Chicks Picks Cruz. In hindsight, I do kind of wish that I kept Chicks Picks Cruz and then just bought a separate Cruz and painted it into this one, since Chicks Picks Cruz was super important to Cars Adventures, and it is kind of weird to no longer have any sort of custom representing that, but still, I do absolutely love this. I really love the facial expression, which is a carryover from her time as Chicks Picks Cruz. I love the front half being blue with the Cruz writing on her in yellow. I was actually inspired by the design that you see on the back of XRS Drag Racer Cruz, which kind of had this blobby blue look kind of coming in from the back. And I decided to make the front blue, and I really, really like how that looked. Cruz wasn't racing at the time, so she doesn't have a number on her side. But again, this is a personal favorite design of mine. Oh, and if you look at the base, you can see, yeah, this was a beach racer. Lightning Cup Cruise is another Lightning Cup racer that I think looks pretty close to a type of expanded universe cruise design we would actually see. I stuck to some pretty common design standards for Cruise, keeping her primarily yellow, but replacing the Dinoco dinosaur on the back with this whole section being in blue, which I think turned out pretty good. Lightning Cup logo is there on the hood, and she also has the Lightning Cup logo on the back, which I really like. The only thing that I don't like about this item in hindsight is the facial expression. I wish I had given her slightly bigger eyes, something a bit closer to what we see on Talk Show Cruise. I think that is one of the best facial expressions I've ever done on a custom, and I don't know, not a fan of this one looking back, but I do still really like this design. Moving on to Jackson Storm Customs, we have Racer 17. In an early season of Cars Adventures, the mysterious Racer 17 organizes a racing cup, and everybody finds out that it's actually secretly Jackson in disguise. The funny thing about this custom is that this actually isn't the original Racer 17, it's a recreation of it. Now, I turned the original Racer 17 custom into a different custom at some point. I'm not sure what that custom is nowadays, but eventually, I had another spare Jackson Storm laying around and didn't know what to do with it, so I decided to turn that custom into a new incarnation of Racer 17. A really obscure custom for me to bring back and still have in all of my collection. You know, for all the items that I've repainted, I don't often go back and redo old customs. I was just talking in the Talk Show Cruise section about how I would love to have another Chicks Picks Cruise custom. You know, I didn't do that. I didn't remake that. I didn't remake Self-Sponsored the King from Cars Adventures, but I did remake Racer 17, which is kind of odd. I think I did it just because it was super easy to do. Just have to fully paint him in black, add the number 17 on the side. He has a really bad facial expression. I don't know, guys. I don't know why I still have this one. I don't know why I went back and recreated it, but hey, now Racer 17 is a part of my collection for the time being. Race Damage Jackson Storm is another Race Damage custom that I think held up pretty well. Just like Cal Weathers, he has paint splotches from other racers and a good hefty dose of sandpapering to get him all scraped up. He also has sort of a wincing expression with black eyelids. Now, I don't have a paint color that matches Jackson's coloring, so I did just use black, but it does kind of look like he has a black eye, like he got hit, which kind of ended up working. Easily my favorite detail with this Jackson is his spoiler, which I ripped out most of the way and kind of put on in this weird, crazy damage configuration. This was used in Cars Adventures, I believe. There was a storyline where Jackson was damaged. Then he recovered for quite a while. But yeah, I really do like how this turned out. Protectors of Radiator Springs Jackson Storm is one of my favorite custom diecasts of all time. Like the other Protectors of Radiator Springs customs we've seen, he uses a black and purple color scheme, and I think it honestly works really well for Jackson. We have Pro written on the side instead of his typical Igniter logo, the 2.0 on the side, with his classic Jackson Storm S traced over and redone in purple. His whole hood here is done in purple as well. This concept of having this part of Jackson be one color and then the top here be a different color would later be reused for my Lightning Cup Jackson Storm. And, oh, on this side it says Pro. I didn't remember that we have the number on one side and writing on the other. Doing it before the GRC made asymmetrical diecast sides. Cool. Jackson's back here is kept exactly the same, except I painted over his rookie stripes. Actually, all of this is kept the same. Since the back of Jackson's already painted in black, I didn't repaint the back there. Over the years, I've complained several times that a lot of the Jackson Storm variants we got in the diecast line look really samey. A lot of them just look pretty much identical with very little change from variant to variant, and I've especially complained that they never really change up Jackson's color or hood. When I was making Ty's Cars 4, I knew I wanted to do something drastically different with the character, so I made the front half of Lightning Cup Jackson Storm red. Honestly, I think this is my personal favorite Lightning Cup variant. It looks strikingly different from other Jackson Storms, but I think it still looks like the character. The front is red here, and the back half is painted in black, and I took the Jackson S and made it kind of look a bit more like the Lightning Cup lightning bolt symbol that we see on the sides of several of the racers. We got his number there, all red up here with the gold lightning bolt on the front. I think his expression turned out great. And yeah, I really like this with the black and gold highlights and all that. Easily my favorite of the Lightning Cup customs, and easily my favorite Jackson custom I've done by a mile. But this actually started out life as a Vampire Jackson Storm custom that I made for Cars Adventures, which kind of inspired the design that I ended up using for the Lightning Cup Jackson. Yeah, it used to be that, but the vampire was just a costume. I know Cars Adventures gets crazy, but no, Jackson didn't become an actual vampire. He dressed up as one for a Halloween party. So yeah. Race Damaged Ryan Inside Laney is another damage custom that I think has held up surprisingly well and has gone untouched by me for several years. This is a custom that I honestly often forget I have. There are so many Ryan and Chase variants on my shelf. They just keep making variants of those two that I kind of forgot that I do have a custom of Ryan out there. He's not as damaged as some of the other racers, but he does still have a squinting expression, bent axles, which cause him to often kind of sit slightly raised up. As you can see, the same hefty dose of sandpapering that the rest of these customs have, and easily my favorite detail, this big blue paint splatter on the side of him there. Not much else to say with this. Another one of the damage customs, and I believe the second to last one in the collection. Redline Sheldon Shifter is the final Redline racer in my collection, and despite being one of the only ones left, he is actually not in the movie. Yeah, this was one of a few Redline racer customs that I made after Redline came out, just to kind of add to the collection, and somehow, some way, Sheldon has survived all these years. He's an item that I honestly kind of forgot about. In fact, on the collection list that Robin Tailsfighter and I keep, Redline Sheldon Shifter is marked with a question mark after him because Robin wasn't sure whether or not he still existed. Robin, if you're watching this, here he is, right here. I don't know why I still have Redline Sheldon Shifter, but I do. Much like a lot of the other surviving Redline customs, he's one that I simply didn't have anything else to do with. Honestly, I do kind of like his design. You can see that my sense of design got a little better since I made Redline. Easily the most awkward thing about this design is that he's very clearly made from a beach racer, with that overspray still very apparent. Damaged JD McPillar is my final damaged custom here, and I think he's probably the best of them. He's got another great squinting expression. He's all dented. You can actually see his base coat of paint here. That's how far down I sanded parts of him. His entire side is scraped up, his axles are bent, spoiler is bent, and on the other side he has this huge stripe, this big scrape of someone else's paint covering him. Easily my personal favorite of these damaged customs, made when JD was pretty rare and I got a duplicate of him in a multi-pack. JP Drive here is the final of my customs that I have because Mattel will probably never make them. I'm sure many of us have custom Apple racers in our collection, and this is mine that I made all the way back in 2018, and I think he still holds up pretty well. I've used him in the background of several videos over the years, but he usually just stays in my collection. He's not 100,000,000,000% movie accurate. He does have kind of a simplified design going on there on the side. He doesn't have headlights and some other little details like that. But for what it's worth, just like with my Damaged McQueen and Damaged Doc, I keep this custom as is because I think it works as a perfectly suitable stand-in for JP Drive. I do really want to get into making customs with decals at some point in the future, and when I do, JP is easily going to be one of the first ones that I make, but I think I am just going to buy a new Danny Suarez model next gen for that. I think that I'm going to keep this original JP as is, because I've kept him for so long, I do have kind of an attachment to him. Kara Crashwell, the main antagonist of Ties Cars 4, has two different variants in my collection. This is her regular HDB variant from when Chick Hicks purchases the HDB company and sponsors Kara as his own racer for them. She has the HDB logo on her hood here with the lowercase h and t and capital B, just like Chick Hicks had, as well as two little balloons here referencing the original logo on Chick Hicks. She's painted green and black, and she races with the number infinity, something that I thought would be cool and different. She has our rookie stripes on the back as well. I really, really like how this design turned out. And the funny thing with Kara is about like 8 or 9 months after I introduced her in Ties Cars 4, Mattel actually gave us an official design for an HDB next gen with Rowdy Revan Bush, which is pretty funny. It was something that a lot of fans had asked for, but I never really expected it to happen. So it is cool to see that I did a custom and then Mattel did an official one. Again, doing a next-gen HGB, I certainly wasn't the first one, but it's just fun for me to think, like, oh yeah, this actually predates the official HGB next-gen. Kara Crashwell's Lightning Cup design is basically the same as her regular HGB design, but with the HGB logo swapped out for the Lightning Cup logo, and also some slightly different shaping for the black painted parts of her, as well as different colored wheels. She also notably has a different expression, which is much closer to a traditional next-gen face. This used to be a Chase Race-A-Lot, and you can see I pretty much just traced over Chase Race-A-Lot's eyes there. The funny thing with this item is that this actually used to be the Chase Race-A-Lot that you could see in my intro for every video for years. I used to show in my intro a brief stop motion clip of me painting a Chase Race-A-Lot red. That was a Redline Chase Race-A-Lot variant that I made, that I was working on at the time that I made that intro. And yeah, now that item exists as Kara Crashwell, which is funny to me. You know, that red Chase ended up being pretty important to the channel because it was in the intro for all those years. And even though he's not around anymore, this is still a pretty important item now that it's Kara Crashwell. For Ties Cars 4, I also developed several new background Piston Cup racers. Some of these were replacements for next gens that hadn't been released at the time, and others were just fun ones I wanted to sneak into the background to have a few new racers, just like how Cars 3 introduced a few new sponsors to the Cars universe. Nearly all of these are references to other parts of the channel, primarily Cars Adventures, and Frankie Fabulous is one of the most obvious references. He's a racer sponsored by Fabulous Inc., just like the character Fabulous from Cars Adventures. And his paint job is actually inspired directly off of the paint job that the Fabulous Custom had for a very long time in Cars Adventures, just kind of updated and modernized. It was really fun to do a custom design that I had done so many years ago on a different car model and kind of make an updated, modernized one. Really, really fun to do. I absolutely loved the blue, red, gold, and silver color scheme here. For those of you who don't know, Fabulous, who you'll see in the collection a bit later on, is based on my first ever subscriber and YouTube friend, Fabulous Cars Fan 129, who'd come up with some lore for a series he was working on where he was a racer and the tie character was the crew chief, which is to this day why my custom still has the number 129 on it. So since that custom and that storyline, you know, that my friend made is so important to me and so important to the history of the channel, I knew I had to reference it in Ties Cars 4 somewhere. So I created this new Fabulous racer to sneak into the background of the movie. In hindsight, I guess I could have just used Fabulous from Cars Adventures, but I like that I made my own custom specific character just for Ties Cars 4. Road and Trailer is another Piston Cup racer from Ties Cars 4 that's based on a very good friend of mine. He has the Blackfire color scheme created by my good friend Robin Tailsfighter. Robin does a whole set of customs that he calls the Blackfire Racing Team, which are black with this really cool fire logo. And for Ties Cars 4, I wanted to reference Robin and his work and all the stuff he helps me out with on the channel by doing my very own Blackfire racer. And I really, really like how this turned out. It's pretty much a direct adaptation of Robin's Blackfire racers down to reusing the Danny Suarez model. This used to be a Redline Danny Suarez, for the record. But the side, I did my own original design for. Other than that, again, pretty much just based on Robin's design. And in the movie, Road and Trailer was voiced by Robin Tailsfighter himself. Something that I also wanted to do with Frankie Fabulous, but unfortunately Fabulous Cars Fan wasn't online often at the time. But yeah, this is Road and Trailer, the Blackfire Racer. Even the name is kind of made to sound close to Robin Tailsfighter, an item that I'm very happy to have. Love having my own take on a custom made by a good friend of mine. We return to the world of Ties Cars 4 racers with Cars Adventures references with Jerry Motoro here. And this poor guy has certainly seen better days. Much like Yellow and Pink Ramon from Ties Cars 4, his pink paint has almost completely flaked off in several places. He looks really, really messy, and before filming this review, I did add another coat of pink paint to him to try to cover it up a little bit, but yeah, he's going to require several coats, unfortunately. See, back when I was making Ties Cars 4, my pink paint pen had run out, and my stores only sold the pink paint pen Sharpie in a multi-pack. So I went out and I bought an off-brand that was selling a pink on its own, and now it flaked like this. So in hindsight, I shouldn't have done that. Anyway, looking past the really ugly flaking that's happened to him over the years, I do really like the Jerry Motoro design here. I'm a pretty big fan of the concept that I did here. He is sponsored by Awilo Tires, of course, the company run by Giuseppe Awilo from Cars Adventures, who we took a look at a bit earlier. In Cars Adventures, Giuseppe never had his own racer or anything, but I thought it would be a fun little connection to make. I based the red design with pink off of sort of Supreme and how they do that whole white with a little red part. I wanted to do something kind of similar, but with pink and red instead, since Awilo Tires are supposed to be sort of a designer brand. But really, the reason why I wanted a racer with this company in particular was because of the letter A. As you can see, if you turn this guy around, he says A113. I'm really, really proud of this reference. I had to get that iconic Pixar Easter egg in there somewhere. I really, really love what I did. He is actually also based on a Danny Sorvas model. This was actually the Redline Danny, sorry, not Road and Trailer. I'm actually not sure if Road and Trailer was based on a Danny then, but this used to be a Redline Danny back in the day. But yeah, I really love that I snuck the A113 onto this guy, but I don't love what's happening to the paint, so we gotta fix that. Jaden Fast is our final Ties Cars 4 Piston Cup racer, and he's not only my personal favorite Ties Cars 4 racer, he's also one of my favorite customs of all time. I absolutely love how this item came out, with a really unique fading paint design going from white to light blue that I don't think I'll ever be able to replicate. The super unique blend of colors here is something that I really, really love. I absolutely adore how this turned out, and I also really like all the logos on him that are kind of dripping, like his number 1 here, which goes all the way across to his spoiler. Fade In is a super obscure reference to Cars Adventures, where in the earliest days of the series, all the way back in 2017, there was a racer who was sponsored by Fade In Paint Company. He was a veteran racer. He ends up exploding. Actually, that custom is now the Flashback Mystery Racer with the whole detachable chassis concept. His name was Aiden Fast. So in Ties Cars 4, when I decided to bring back the sponsor for a reference on a next gen, I named this guy Jaden Fast as a reference to the previous racer. And yeah, absolutely love this custom. Probably in my top 5 favorites of all time for my whole collection. I made my own custom Shifty Drug Next Gen in 2019, and I'm not really sure why I still have it after all these years. In 2021, Mattel released their very own official Next Gen Shifty Drug with William Byrev, and I never repainted this into anything else. I simply haven't really had anything to turn it into. I haven't had a new Next Gen custom I wanted to make or anything like that, so this item has stayed as a next-gen Shifty Drug, and it's kind of become a fun novelty to me that I have the official one, William Byrev, as well as my own take on what it could possibly look like, before we even knew we would ever get a next-gen Shifty Drug. I still really like the logo that I did here with the shift stick between the Shifty and Drug writing. I really like that. Honestly, I kind of prefer that to what they did on the official William Byrev. I just thought that was a fun design I came up with. Other than that, I don't know, there's not much to talk about. You can see the shift stick again on the back here, and on this side as well. You've got the red and orange color scheme with some silver highlights. Not much to say about this guy. Pretty generic design, but I like it. I don't know. I've kept it around all this time, like I said. Maybe someday I'll turn it into something else, but it's one of those items that I now have quite a bit of an attachment to, so I don't think I will. We now move out of my racers into the section of my collection that I like to call Race Day. This is where I keep my pit crew members, Piston Cup and race staff members, fans, and so on and so forth. I don't have any custom pit crew members, which I was kind of surprised by, actually. So we're starting off with our first item here, a staff member from Ties Cars 4. This is Alejandro Safewheel, the flag waver that we see in the Lightning Cup. He, of course, is a repaint of Eric Langley, simply with Lightning Cup designs. Not much to talk about. I found it really fun to design some Lightning Cup items beyond just the racers. These more kind of obscure items from Ties Cars 4, the random background characters that are peppered throughout that kind of add world building, are easily among my favorite customs I made for the movie. Of course, Eric Langley and Alex Carville are typically packed together, so when I got Alejandro Safewheel, I also got a spare Alex Carville, which I turned into Jennifer Wheellock here. She is a security car for the Lightning Cup. Once again, pretty standard design, keeping the same design that Alejandro had with the red and then gold stripe and black stripe on her. And I just gotta say, to this day, I think Alejandro is one of the most clever pun names I've ever made. I really like the names of these two, Alejandro Safewheel and Jennifer Wheellock. Really fun. I loved being able to add new diecasts to pre-existing categories of characters for Ties Cars 4. Characters like Ricky Radial, Akio, and Rock Hudson were just added into my pre-existing collection of Radiator Springs visitors, Thomasville cars, Tokyo cars, and I was able to do the same thing with the new reporter background character I made, Hero Hot Wheel. Hero here is simply a repaint of Andrea, who, much like most of the Ties Cars 4 customs, was just an item that was out that year. He's repainted green, pretty basic repaint, just a slightly different expression, and I made sure to keep the press badge still visible over there on his side. Hero Hot Wheel was voiced in Ties Cars 4 by my good friend CarsIgnite95, and his name is actually a reference to Cars Ignite's Angry Birds series, Hero's Quest, where the main character is named Hero. And fun fact, I also voiced a character in that series, a bird by the name of Spark. Moving on to race fans for Ties Cars 4, I made quite a few, starting off with the movie's very own Mia and Tia variants, Lightning Cup Mia and Tia. Mia and Tia weren't in Cars 3, and while I think it does make sense for them to not really be there, I did want to include them in Ties Cars 4 as it was meant to be a celebration of the entire Cars series. I took Dynaco Mia and Tia, who were out at the time, and transformed them into Lightning Cup-inspired variants, recreating Lightning McQueen's paint job onto the two of them. They were actually complete surprise cameos in the movie. I didn't tell anybody about them beforehand, but I distinctly remember one of my viewers actually piecing together their cameo, which to this day I still think is honestly pretty crazy. In early 2021, I did a video going over my collection of Cars Diecast card backs, and I showed off that I had 2 copies of Dynaco Mia and Tia's 2-pack card back. And I remember distinctly getting a comment saying, "Wait, did you buy another Mia and Tia for Ties Cars 4? And I was like, how did you put that together? Yes, exactly that. That's exactly what I did. But Mia and Tia weren't the only ones to get decked out for the Lightning Cup. Here we have Lightning Cup Maddie McGear. This was a super simple custom. I just repainted part of her accessories gold and added a little Lightning Cup logo there on her flag. I had a spare Maddie McGear sitting around for quite a while at the time. I had gotten her back in late 2019 in the 2-pack with her mother, Melissa Burnabrake. And when I was making Ties Cars 4, I thought, oh yeah, I got a spare Maddie. I should do something with her for the movie. I honestly really kind of miss doing that for Ties Cars 4. It was so fun to go through all the items that I had, all of my miscellaneous duplicates and past customs, and see, hey, what could I make for this movie? Because I wanted to do as many customs as possible. I haven't really had a project like that ever since, and I can't wait for my next opportunity to do something like that. It was really fun. One of my main goals while creating race fans for Ties Cars 4 was to create fans for cars that weren't given them in the diecast line yet. This led to me creating fan diecasts for Cal Weathers, Bobby Swift, and Brick Yardley. Here we have Cal's fan, Brandon T. Quick. I really like this guy. He's a repaint of Courtney Carspur, of course, reusing that little Italian car model, and I repainted the 95 flag emblem to be a 42 instead. Another pretty simple custom here, but he is a fun one that I do like quite a bit. Although in hindsight, since he is based on the Italian fan model, I wish I gave him a bit of a more Italian name. Anyway, this guy's a Cal Weathers fan, so clearly he's a man of great taste, and he has my eternal respect for that. Katie Frontrunner was the custom Kara Crashwell fan that I made for Ties Cars 4, a repaint of a spare Sally that I gotten from the Radiator Springs Cleanup 5-pack, which I had received for Christmas of 2020. Another pretty simple custom here, painted all green with the little Kara Crashwell Infinity on her hood, and an expression. I don't really know how to describe this face. It's not my best custom face, but hey, I guess anything is better than the original 2006 Sally Diecast face, right? In hindsight, I think I should have given some of these guys details like tail lights and license plates, but, you know, for the purposes of the movie, you were only ever going to see their front in the crowd, so that's probably why I didn't. Here we have the Ties Cars 4 Brick and Bobby fans, Mary and Carrie Motorton. The Motorton sisters here are both Cruise repaints, with Mary being a repaint of the old plastic Dynaco Sally, and Carrie being a repaint of the original Chicks Picks Cruise, who, for some reason, I cut the mirrors off of at one point, I guess to try to make it look slightly more like a racing look for Cruise. I don't know. What I really like about these two is that they're actually fans with hats. I painted Lego tiles and put their respective racers' numbers on them, and then hot glued them to their roofs. Unfortunately, the hot glue completely wore off only a few months after Ties Cars 4 came out. It completely dried off, and yeah, I was able to cleanly take it off the car's hoods without damaging them. I've wanted to re-glue them ever since, but I haven't gotten around to it just yet. They were actually glued on them at an angle, something I have to remember to do when I glue them again, and I think doing it at an angle looks much better. But as you can see, this is the original Dynaco Sally. The old plastic one that I alluded to earlier even has the painted base that I gave her all the way back when I first painted her back in the day. And then Carrie here is that old Chicks Picks Cruise, complete with her purple tires that she had in Cars Adventures. So yeah, these two were both pretty quick customs, just, again, designed to be background characters and not much else, but I really do like the hats. I really need to re-glue the hats. And finishing up the race day section, we have the only hauler I've ever painted, Ties Cars 4 Mac. This guy is actually the final Ties Cars 4 custom, with one exception that kind of half counts that we'll get to at the end of the video, that being the special Ties Cars 4 tie custom I made. This is, to this day, the only hauler I've ever repainted, and I quite like it. The design really isn't all that much. You just have Dynaco written in big letters, but repainting an entire hauler was a pretty big undertaking for me, especially because my yellow paint absolutely sucks, and I actually had to buy an entirely new yellow paint pen halfway through painting this guy. I did so many layers, and you could still kind of see through it in several different places. Other than that, this is a fully repainted Mac, decked out in Cruise's blue and yellow colors. I didn't include any images of Cruise on the side or anything. I would have loved to, you know, if I had access to printing decals, something that, again, I still really want to learn how to do at some point in the near future. Certainly going to learn how to do that sooner rather than later. The thing that I like the most about this Mac design, other than the fact that I painted a hauler, is his cab. I wanted to make sure this still looked like Mac, so I kept the front red and painted the cat blue and part of the side yellow here, kind of emulating the regular lightning bolt design on Mac. You know, making it yellow with the 51, making it kind of a different shape here instead of the lightning bolt. Dynaco 51 written here on the back. Of course, you could open it up like any old hauler. I even redid the inside of the door yellow here. And another favorite detail of mine is the fact that if you disconnect Mac, I actually gave him 51 mud flaps instead of 95 mud flaps. This, to this day, is actually the only Cars 3 Mac that I've ever bought. I'm sure many of you are well aware that I actually don't have a regular Mac in my collection, just a Jocko Flocko and a Cars 2 Mac. Well, I did buy a Cars 3 Mac, but I repainted it here for Ties Cars 4. If you want to see this in greater detail, this is the only, or one of the only, Ties Cars 4 customs that I actually did a full review of. I did it for a birthday request last May, so you can check out a full review of this guy on my channel if you want to see even more and learn a bit more about him. Now get out of here, Mac. The next custom in my collection is easily one of my most forgotten ones, but one that I still think holds up to this day. This is Silver Sigalert. Back in 2018, I got Sigalert, who my autocorrect always tries to respell as cigarette for the record, in a 2-pack, and I didn't know what to do with her. There really wasn't all that much I could come up with for Sigalert, weren't any new characters I wanted to turn her into, so I eventually decided to make a silver variant of her, replacing just one color with silver like Mattel would do on a real silver variant. Of course, I chose the white on Sigalert to turn silver, including the star up here, and I honestly think this still holds up pretty well. At the time, I was super proud of the fact that I was able to write "Take It" on the hood in a similar font to Sig Alert here. I just kind of wrote over the original writing. Obviously, I had to redo that and the stars after I painted her silver. And while the Sharpie has faded, I still think it looks pretty alright, I guess. I don't know, I guess it's a close enough match. You can still see the K and E from the original writing there, and I tried to match it up as best I could. I really do need to redo that. Probably my favorite detail that I added, really the only thing I changed about the design other than making her silver, I gave her the kind of defined eyelashes there that she has in the movie, but not on the diecast. I wish I'd used a thinner Sharpie though, because that's definitely a bit too thick. I also bent out her axles to make her a bit more damaged, which is kind of stupid, but she does still roll just fine. I don't know, guys. This is an item that I kind of always forget that I have, but I think it's an okay one in the collection. Maybe one day I'll reuse it for something else, but it's one of those that I've had for so long, I can't really see myself doing that. So far, every custom we've taken a look at has fit into a specific category in my collection. Radiator Springs cars, Radiator Springs visitors, piston cup racers, so on and so forth. But the final two categories we have to take a look at here are made up entirely of customs. Those categories being Bat car items and YouTuber customs. Batcar is my Batman parody series that I started in early 2023. As a pretty big Batman fan, I thought it'd be funny to parody some of his iconic stories, primarily the movies, with Cars characters. It's a series that I really loved making, and I also really loved making the customs for it. And I did quite a few, taking Cars characters and making them into Batman-themed counterparts. Now, not every episode of Batcar is out. I recorded 4 back in 2023, and the series is going to come back at some point in the future. So just know, if you watch Batcar, you actually won't see all of these customs in the series yet. We haven't gotten around to showcasing all of them just yet, but I have shown all the Batcar customs on my channel before, in collection videos, and also when I was making them, I did it on live stream a lot. Anyway, let's get started with our first of many Batcar items, Batcar himself. Much like Ties Cars 4, where a lot of the customs were made from either duplicates that I had or items that were out at the time, meaning early 2021 or late 2020 items, a lot of Batcar items were made from items that were out from around that time. So late 2022 and early 2023. So you'll see a lot of miscellaneous Cars on the Road items turned into Batman characters. I think Speed Demon was an absolutely perfect choice for a Batman parody. In fact, one of the main ideas for Batcar came from when I saw the Speed Demon item itself. I saw it and I thought, that would make a pretty funny Batmobile type character. I planned a Cars Adventures episode before Cars on the Road came out where the Speed Demon was going to end up in Radiator Springs, and everyone thought that the character was Batman, and then the show came out and Speed Demon ended up being this kind of otherworldly being that made her dreams up. But that idea stuck with me and eventually inspired me to make Batcar. I really like how this design turned out, painted black, and then I kept the gray on Speed Demon the same. Actually, very little of Speed Demon was painted black. Most of it is just the original base color. I just painted the eyebrows and painted part of the hood here. I think it works as your sort of classic black cowl, gray outfit Batman. I decided not to paint in pupils, just like how in the comics Batman doesn't have visible pupils. Added some yellow highlights and also painted the wings black. I only painted this side and not the inside for some reason, and unfortunately the paint has faded away here over the years. But still, I think this is a pretty good design, and I think it's one that's iconic and synonymous with my channel at this point. When Batcar isn't fighting crime, he's Billionaire Breaks Wayne. I hope you like pun names, because there are going to be a lot of them for the next several minutes. This was a very last-minute custom I made when I realized that I needed a civilian version of Batcar. Originally, I was just going to use Speed Demon, but I realized that I didn't want him to have wings when he was in just his regular look, so I simply bought a Speed Demon, clipped the wings, and repainted the silver parts black, but that has actually, unfortunately, worn off over time as well. Not much to say here, pretty simple, just one that I bought for certain scenes. I've always had a bit of difficulty repainting pitties, but Revan here, the Batcar parody of Robin, is easily the best one that I've ever done. This is genuinely one of my favorite Batcar customs, and probably one of my favorite customs of all time. I think I translated the typical Robin look to this item really, really well. With the red and the iconic black and yellow logo, I turned Sarah Cog's goggles into Robin's little eye mask thing that he wears, black roof representing his black hair, even did some yellow wheels there. I'm a really, really big fan of how this one turned out. Not all that much that I can say about it, but Revan is easily one of my favorite characters in Batcar, and it's been really fun and really funny trying to shoehorn Robin into several Batman movies that he's not in. He makes Batcar a much more lighthearted and funny series. Batcar's Alfred is a repaint of Jet Robinson, using a spare of him that I'm pretty sure I had lying around since 2021 in the Double Clutch Daily 2-pack. I really like how he turned out as well. Another Batcar character with a pretty simple design, but I think it's a really good one at that. For Alfred and a few other characters that wear suits, I designed a little tie here on the hood and just tried to make it look like a bit of a dress shirt going on with the hood. I was inspired by how they adapted the clothing on the Star Wars cars on characters like Ramon as Han Solo and McQueen as Luke Skywalker, where they put the outfit there on the hood, and I think it turned out pretty well. Really not all that much to say about Alfred, but another one that's fun, and another one that's very necessary for a Batman story. Unless you're the current comics where he's been dead for like 6 years. Thanks, Bane. I think Bane did that. If Bane didn't do that, that would be really awkward, but I think it was Bane. Commissioner Gordon here is actually a repaint of a wheel-action driver sheriff. Back in 2017, I bought a couple of the wheel-action drivers, specifically the ones with opening mouths because I really liked them, and eventually, when I wanted things to repaint, I repainted them. Something that I honestly regret, but hey, at the very least, it meant that later on I didn't have to go out and buy a new sheriff for Commissioner Gordon. He spent several years as a Radiator Springs 500.5 sheriff custom before being turned into the Redline base trainer for Cars Redline, a design that I always really, really didn't like. It was pretty lazy of me to repaint a sheriff in that movie in the first place. Not a big fan of it, so I was very happy to finally get to turn him into something new with Commissioner Gordon. I think he's a pretty fun design. Another pretty simple one with the Gotham City Police Department logo there on the back. Not all that much to say about him, but yeah. Now he could point angrily. Catwoman here is one of my least favorite Batcar customs. As you can see, she is a reuse of Dat's Jammin', one of many, many cars for Batcar that were repainted from duplicates I got from the Peggy Liner 9-pack when I got it in early 2023. She does have little paper cat ears up there to help add to the look, but I don't know, Dat's Jammin' isn't an easy car to convincingly repaint into something new. I do like that I painted these little silver stripes on her, representing the zipper and other parts of her jumpsuit, and I also really like that I made it look like she's wearing her kind of yellow goggles from the comics. I also repainted the little parachute on the back to be purple to, I guess, fit a bit more in character. But yeah, not one of my favorites, but still a very necessary character you gotta get in a Batman series. Despite not appearing in the series yet, I genuinely think Supercar is in the top 5 best customs that I've ever made. Translating Superman's design onto the King ended up working really, really well, and I love absolutely every part of it. From the red spoiler meant to represent his cape, to the logo on the hood, to the facial expression, to the iconic little curly hair attached to his roof. I absolutely adore this design. I can't wait to introduce him and some other Justice League parody cars into Batcar when it eventually returns. Easily one of my all-time favorites. Nothing else I can say here. Goodbye, Supercar. Oh, there he goes. He's flying away. Bye. Up next, we have Lightning Flash, a parody of the Flash portrayed by Lightning McQueen. This is another custom that's simple, but I really like it. It's a repaint of the Cars on the Road Expression variant McQueen from the IV3 pack. I don't count it as a McQueen since it's not supposed to be, of course. It's the Batcar equivalent of the Flash. His name is just a play on Lightning McQueen. You know, it's a pun because he's a repaint of McQueen. It was important for me to not have the Batcar characters be like amalgams, to not have them be Cars characters dressed up as Batman characters, but having the Flash be based on McQueen, I thought was absolutely perfect and too good to pass up. We got the Flash logo there on the hood, the eyes without pupils. I know the Flash kind of flip-flops between being drawn with pupils and not, but I decided to do the no pupil design for this custom. Simply covered up McQueen's 95 with my own little lightning bolt on either side. And yeah, another one that I think is really fun. It's going to be fun to introduce him in Batcar when it comes back. Up next is, I think, one of the most clever customs I've ever done. Here we have Aquaman. Obviously a parody of Aquaman, this item is a repaint of a Hydro Wheels McQueen, meaning that he's built to float and run on water. I thought that would be a really funny idea for the Aquaman parody car, and I think it turned out absolutely perfectly. This was a Hydro Wheels McQueen that I got all the way back when he first came out, and when I went on my custom frenzy repainting things like color changers and wheel action drivers and other things I shouldn't have repainted in late 2017, this Hydro Wheels McQueen became one of the things that I ended up repainting. I still have one Hydro Wheels McQueen intact, the one that's a playset exclusive with the unique design, but I decided to sacrifice this one to become a custom. It became many things over the years. I want to say it was a Hydro Wheels 00 from Cars Adventures, then it was Hydro Wheels Fabulous for several years, and now, of course, it is a Aquaman parody, Aquaman, and I think this is easily its best incarnation. It definitely makes me regret repainting a Hydro Wheels McQueen a whole lot less. Of course, we have the orange with the scale design. This was so annoying to paint, guys. This took literally forever. I had to do so many coats of a lot of the colors. And, oh, look, we even have the Aquaman logo on the back. I forgot I added that. He's got a little golden spoiler at the back. A really fun design that I absolutely love. And, of course, still functions as a Hydro Wheels there. You haven't seen him in Batcar yet, but you have seen him in Cars Christmas Chaos, where we did several jokes regarding Aquaman. Moving to the villains here, we have the Joker, obviously a parody of the Joker, portrayed by Greebles, who I thought was a perfect fit on account of being both a gremlin and a clown. While most of the Batcar designs are based on characters' iconic comic looks, Joker is kind of this weird middle ground between specific movie design and comic design. Since I was parodying the Joker movie in particular, I gave him that version of the Joker's eye makeup with those iconic blue triangles. But other than that, I did your typical comic Joker. That version of him never wore the purple suit for some reason, and so since this is retelling several different Batman stories across Batcar, I wanted to make sure that he does have that purple suit there represented. We got the green hair, the big lips, and of course the nose, untouched from Greebles. Another one that I think is just really fun and really funny. And yeah, I also hear that I also hear that they're gonna continue to use him in every Batman project ever. And ever and ever and ever will always lead to him, no matter what. Even when people ask them to use other villains, it's too bad. You get the Joker again. Also, apparently there are 3 of him. Have you guys heard of the 3 Jokers when DC was like, oh, by the way, there are 3 of him? And everyone was like, what? There are 3? And DC was like, yeah, there were 3. We're gonna make a comic that explains this. And then they did. And then everybody hated it, so they retconned it. Thank you, DC. Up next, we have the Riddler. This one is obviously a parody of his look from 2022's The Batman movie, where he has this whole big mask apparatus that covers his face and his mouth, everything except for his glasses. So I, of course, used Meldorado. Specifically, this is that really ugly Thailand Meldorado from a few years ago, and then I just completely covered him up in tape, which, I don't know, I thought it worked. It really just looks like he's completely covered and wrapped in stuff in the movie. Not to mention, he does use tape on several of his victims throughout, so I don't know. I thought it worked, and I think it's just really, really funny. I think it's kind of a perfect fit. And, fun fact, underneath here, Meldorado hasn't been painted at all, so if I ever want a regular Thailand Meldorado for some reason, I could just remove the tape, put it back on or redo it, and then I have a Thailand Mel. In case you were wondering what the situation is for his wheels, 2 of them are exposed and the back ones aren't, so he can't roll, but you can still see the wheels. Inmate Riddler had to show up for the film's iconic prison scene. This was a very short notice custom. I didn't have time to go out and buy a spare Meldorado to make into it, so I took a spare Mario Andretti that I had and painted him all orange. You can see, like a few of the customs we've seen throughout this video, he's really only painted to be camera friendly from one specific angle. If you move to the back, you can see I didn't do enough coats of paint to cover him. I just did enough to make him look good on camera from this angle. He is the first custom you guys are going to see here that actually uses painter's tape to cover part of him up. This is something that I started doing while making Batcar, specifically on characters' mouths, in order to cover them up and sort of redesign the mouth fully. It's something that I do think I have to do a bit more in the future, because it's honestly a pretty good strategy. Here, Mario Andretti's typical smile has been replaced with this wide open mouth, no doubt chanting Bruce Wayne, or I guess Breaks Wayne. The glasses, for the record, are paper, and I'm pretty sure Mario Andretti's eyes are just down there underneath, so yeah. Scarecrow here is one of my favorite customs of all time. He uses Nariyuki from Cars on the Road as a basis, but I actually didn't repaint any of Nariyuki to make him. In order to pull off the Scarecrow's iconic sack that he wears over his head, I took a brown paper bag, cut it up really small, and folded it and taped it, ripped it in some places, and then, of course, painted and drew on that. And man, I absolutely love how this one looks. It's been a long time since I've made some new customs, and a long time since I've done Batcar, and honestly, looking at these and reviewing these is making me want to go back and do some more. I absolutely adore this one. I thought Nariyuki would be a perfect fit because he has all these scraps in him, and, you know, I thought it kind of fit with the theme for Scarecrow. And fun fact, underneath the sack here, Nariyuki's visor was actually ripped off. I completely pried off his roof, took out the visor, put the roof back on, and then put the bag over his head. Penguin here is another custom that uses paper to greatly modify his look. His iconic top hat is made entirely out of paper here, just taped onto the top. Other than that, he uses Junior Moon as a basis, and I think that ended up being a pretty good fit for Penguin. We have his bow tie painted there on the hood, just like with Alfred, and I decided to use purple as a complementary color for him. It's not really used on the Penguin all that much these days, but I don't know, I preferred it to making him painted all black. The black, purple, and white look, I think, turned out pretty solid. If you were to ask me to name the greatest custom in my collection of all time, I might just answer Two-Face. I absolutely adore how this custom turned out. A repaint of Cars on the Road Mater, once again from the IV 3-pack, which is where the Flash custom McQueen ended up coming from. I thought this was going to be an absolute pain to paint at first, and it was. This was a pretty difficult one to pull off, but then I realized, hey, why don't I use painter's tape to cover up half of Two-Face here so I could pull off the two halves of the face, and I think it worked out really, really great. The Two-Face effect actually carries over across the entire car, just like how in typical Batman stories, Two-Face wears a two-colored suit. So, since this is a repaint of Mater, I thought it would be clever to have the good side, the non-corrupted side, be painted blue. You know, the clean, original blue color that Mater was. That was supposed to be what I was sort of emulating there. Of course, we have his black hair, but oops, on the ruined side, the Two-Face side, the evil side, he's painted all purple, like how he's often depicted with kind of a purple face, with all these lines and wrinkles and scorch marks. He's got his yellow eyes with some veins sticking out there. He's got his crazy white hair. And of course, we have the white suit on one side and the black suit on the other side, perfectly painted down the middle. I really am so proud of how this one turned out. Probably do a few more coats of paint on the white before I end up showing him in the series. But yeah, one of my all-time favorites, if not my all-time favorite custom ever. Mr. Freeze is another personal favorite custom of mine. Based on his iconic comic look, with his silver goggles and red eyes, he's another one that uses painter tape to give him a brand new expression. And he's another custom that's modified with Lego pieces, making his whole ice gun apparatus here. It's supposed to be taped down to the truck bed, but as you can see, it doesn't really stay often, thanks to this big soft plastic cord piece that's used to attach the backpack to the little stud shooter here that acts as his ice gun. I might end up gluing it in the future, but I don't want to turn into the dad from the end of the Lego movie, so maybe I won't. I don't know. I definitely need to secure it if he ever appears in Batcar again. So yeah, usually he just kind of rests without the Lego pieces in there. In case you're wondering how I got the stud shooter on his side, I just jammed it in to the wheel well there of Dexter Hoover. Another personal favorite of mine from Batcar. There are very few Batcar customs that I could say I dislike. I feel like I'm going through all these and being like, oh, this is one of my favorites, but I really love all the Batcar customs, other than the Catwoman car, which I don't really like. But yeah, another one that I think is a pretty good translation of the character. just needs that fixed. Poison Ivy is a repaint of Shigeko, who I had a spare of for a couple years at that point. This was one where I simply repainted the car because I had it. You know, in hindsight, I should have gone out and bought a car that would be a better fit for Poison Ivy. While I do think that it works with the flowers and stuff that are already on Shigeko, I don't know. I just think that Poison Ivy should have been a bit of a more imposing, intimidating vehicle than Shigeko here. Regardless, I do quite like this design, with light green here representing the times that Poison Ivy's skin is depicted as green. Then we have a darker green color with the vines throughout, and of course I repainted Shigeko's hair part up here red, referencing her iconic red hair. I think it's still a pretty good design, but again, in hindsight, I would have liked to have used a different model. But hey, I was working with what I had at the time and what was out at the time. Also, if you're wondering what was here, I ripped off the fan. Bane is one of my all-time favorite Batman villains, and I thought it would be really funny if I made red into him. This is the plastic red that came with a Courthouse playset in 2023, the one that's kind of between the scales of the original red and the deluxe red. I had no use for it, so I decided to turn it into a custom. You can see it has those little holes on the side that you could plug in to a part of the playset. I thought it'd be pretty funny to make this character red. Bane in the comics, of course, is absolutely huge, and he wears this big sort of luchador-esque mask, so that's what I gave him here on the front, turning Red's entire cab into Bane's mask. The rest of him went pretty unchanged, other than a few little black stripes here, sort of representing the straps of the tank top Bane wears. Usually he has this mask, and then kind of a tank top, and the rest of him is just kind of bare skin. So I didn't paint the rest of him, save for Red's hoses on the side, which I painted green, turning them into the Venom tubes, the steroid that Bane gets pumped into him pretty much at all times. I had already chosen red for the custom, and while I was painting him, I was like, hold on, red has hoses on the side. I should make those into the tubes Bane has, and I think that ended up being a pretty funny match. A few minutes ago, we took a look at a car whose name was a pun based on the item they were a repaint of, with Lightning Flash. And now we have the other Batcar custom, whose name is a parody of the car they're a repaint of. That, of course, being Ra's al Ghul, a parody of the Batman villain Ra's al Ghul. Although I've heard that apparently that's an improper pronunciation that was used in the Batman Begins movie, and the proper way to say his name is actually Ra's al Ghul. But I'm just going to stick to the wrong pronunciation because it makes my pun work better. Ra's al Ghul, Ra's al Ghul doesn't work as well if you're pronouncing the name Raish. Anyway, as you can see, he's a repaint of a Neon Racers Urul that I had sitting around for quite a while, decked out in Ra's al Ghul's green robes with its silver trim. His roof is painted black, representing his hair, complete with the white streaks on the side. And probably my favorite detail is that in the comics, Ra's al Ghul tends to wear this big kind of open robe where you can see his chest underneath. So I just left Rahul's hood unpainted there, so it's just the original paint kind of referencing his open kind of naked torso that's under there usually. Up next here we have Deadshot, moving into some of the more secondary Batman villains now. He's a repaint of a Cars 3 veteran racer, one of the Bobby Swift model. I want to say in this guy's past life he was Redline Phil Tankson, I think. Pretty sure he was one of the Redline racers in the past. His front here is painted to look like Deadshot's iconic silver helmet with the one white eye and the one targeting reticle eye, and then several other parts of him are painted red, representing the character's body. You also have these parts, which I believe are based on the character's body as well. I think this item is a pretty good combination of character head design and character body design onto a Cars character. Sometimes it can be a little difficult to figure out, hey, what parts represent the character's head or helmet, what parts represent the rest of them. And I think this worked out pretty well. I'm not a super big fan of the Deadshot character, but I think that's just because the only adaptation of him I've ever seen is the one that Will Smith played. So that's it, huh? We have some kind of custom mega review. From Deadshot, we move over to Deathstroke. His iconic helmet was recreated with the help of painter's tape using the same method that I used for Two-Face, the orange on this side and the blue here on this side, and of course the one visible eye. I think Royce Revsley ended up being a pretty good choice for this guy, not only because he was originally orange, but also because he's kind of this this off-road style car with the open wheels and the big exposed engine. I think it gives him kind of a more nimble look, perfect for Deathstroke, who's supposed to be kind of a master assassin. Usually in the comics, Deathstroke is a pretty big, bulky guy, but I think this sort of design for him worked pretty well. Our final Batman-specific villain here is Firefly. This is a character that's had a lot of looks over the years, and of all things, the one that inspired my custom of him was actually his Lego figure from the Lego video games. Lego Batman 3 back in the day was my introduction to this character, and that design with a big yellow helmet always stuck with me over the years. I believe Lego based him on one of the Batman animated series, specifically the one called The Batman. No relation to the movie of the same name. In the comics, he usually wears this black mask, sort of a dark gray mask, more of a kind of gas mask type deal. But I always thought that bright yellow helmet was a really unique design for the character, so that's what I went with when I repainted Revo Cost to him. Another one that I think really works because, again, kind of have that sort of angular shape that matches Firefly's angular helmet pretty well. And let me tell you, you would not believe your eyes if 10 million of this guy lit up your world as you fell asleep. It was me, Barry! I made it into the custom mega review! That's right, it's Reverse Lightning Flash. He hasn't appeared in Batcar just yet, but you may have seen him in Cars Christmas Chaos, where we recreated the iconic It Was Me, Barry meme with him. This guy is simply a repaint of McQueen, but in yellow with the red and black detailing. Of course, just the opposite of how Lightning Flash looks. Absolutely iconic character. One that I can't take seriously anymore because of how much people have memed him. And our final Batcar variant is one of the funniest customs I've ever made, King Shark. Not only is this guy a kind of a pun because he's a repaint of the King, I think he's just so funny. He really breaks my conventional design standards for a custom, which I did in order to, make him look a bit more like the King Shark character. Absolutely iconic character, thanks to his movie appearance a few years ago, which was absolutely hilarious. I hope James Gunn uses him in the rebooted DCU cinematic universe. We have his little black dot eyes, kind of cross-eyed, looking off in completely different directions, referencing the fact that King Shark is, of course, a shark, so he has one eye on either side of his head. We also have his big mouth with the teeth covering up the King's original mouth, and on the back, a bit of a darker blue to represent the jeans that he wears. I love this custom. Maybe he should have been a bigger character or something, but I think this one is so funny. I have no clue where I could ever fit him into Batcar, but I'm going to go out of my way to make sure he shows up. But there you have it, guys. I know a lot of this video is comprised of Batcar stuff, but that is all for Batcar for now. I have several customs out there that I want to do for Batcar when it comes back. You may have seen in my collection video in late 2023, a pre-Two-Face Harvey Dent, or Harvey Dents as we called him, was in the works, as was a Harley Quinn car. I never went back to those, but they'll be back before Batcar is back. I also have a spare ham that I want to turn into the absolutely brutal villain, Professor Pig. And I also want to make Kite Man. I think I'm going to repaint a plane into Kite Man. A lot of ideas for Batcar. I also need to do the rest of the Justice League, Wonder Woman, Cyborg, Green Lantern, maybe like Martian Manhunter. Love to bring back Batcar, and I do plan to at some point in the future, but for now, that's the full roster for it. Now, before we take a look at our final category, the YouTuber customs, I want to take a look at a couple of bonus items, those being the monster trucks from Cars Adventures. With monster trucks in the Cars Diecast line not often being readily available, I've gone out and bought my own other monster truck toys to repaint for the series. These aren't Mattel diecasts. They're the only cars in this video that aren't Mattel diecasts, aside from another one that we'll see in the YouTuber custom section. So originally I wasn't even going to include them, but they're pretty synonymous with the Cars Adventure series at this point, so I knew I had to. Up first, we have the one and only Extreme. He doesn't even fit in frame. An absolutely iconic character from Cars Adventures, the over-the-top monster truck who we've seen many times over the years. He's had a lot of designs over the years. This current one was introduced to the character in 2023, but he dates all the way back to 2017, where his name was Excitement instead. He's had so many incarnations, guys, and man, I absolutely love this character. For this design, this redesign, I wanted to do something bold, so I did this sort of black flame zigzag design with pink as an outlining color, and I think it worked pretty well. This sort of zigzag on the hood has been a typical part of the Extreme design, but now it's a bit more hidden with the rest of his design. He has suspension. He was this big orange Hot Wheels monster truck back in the day that I got as a gift from my neighbors, and I thought he was pretty much 155 scale, maybe even a little bigger, so he fits with diecasts pretty well. A lot of the other monster trucks are just regular old Hot Wheels, so they're not really 155 scale, but Extreme here definitely works. We have Extreme written on this side. It's actually supposed to be written on both sides, but I actually completely missed the other side when I painted him, but whatever. On the base, it says, "Whoa" and "hip," a reference to a previous design of Extreme that was just covered in trendy catchphrases because it was so cool and epic. I just never repainted over that part of him, and now it's just a fun Easter egg on the base. Get out of here, Extreme. The muffler here started out life as Monster Mutt Poodle, an item that was a running joke on my channel because I kept seeing it on store shelves during my shopping videos, invading the cars section. There were so many of this, nobody wanted to buy this, and we all started making jokes about it in my comments and on my live streams and stuff back in 2021. And then one day I secretly bought it, not revealing it until I released the Ties Cars 4 launch party stream in 2021. I wanted this item to kind of go beyond just a simple running joke in my videos, so I decided to repurpose it into a character in Cars Adventures, creating the Muffler, a monster truck racer. Gave her a facial expression, redid some of the paint. Probably my favorite detail here, redid some of the paint, I redid all of the paint, except for the base here. Probably my favorite detail on her, oh, I also didn't repaint the teeth. Why do I keep interrupting myself? Okay, probably my favorite detail here is the number 7, which is placed on the dog's collar. That's where her racing number is. Pretty fun item, and I think she's successfully kind of gone on beyond a running joke now, which I think is really, really cool. I don't really see people making the Monster Mutt Poodle jokes anymore. Now when the Muffler shows up in Cars Adventures, it's the Muffler. It's its own character. She's grown beyond. The Food Fighter and the Trucker here complete the Muffler's monster truck group. They were repaints of a 2-pack of Hot Wheels monster trucks, and like I said earlier when reviewing Extreme, that means that their scaling is a little bit off. They are 1/64 scale, but since they have these big wheels and are raised up off the ground, it is a bit harder to tell, I think, except for the Trucker. You could definitely tell he's a bit smaller, but hey, I was working with what I could find at the time. Not many companies make 155 scale items. I was just going at what I could find at Walmart. Food Fighter is easily my favorite of the two, and one of my favorite monster truck customs in general. He, of course, used to be a food truck. He's full of a bunch of fun, different sort of tie-dye colors, and my favorite feature, he actually has a little part here that opens up. Now, it is just black on the inside. For years now, I've tried to think of something fun I could put on the inside, some sort of reference or Easter egg. I don't know. Maybe when I do decal printing, I'll give him a fake menu in there with a bunch of little in-jokes. But yeah, he's a car that could have a little secret feature, but I'm not doing anything with it, which, knowing me and my love for Easter eggs and references, is honestly kind of wild. Moving on over to the Trucker. If you're wondering why I packed these two together for the review, it's because they're just really synonymous to me. They're pretty similar characters. They're always seen together in Cars Adventures, and they also came from a 2-pack together originally. He's number 14. Food Fighter is number 32, of course. He's probably my least favorite of the monster truck customs. Not much going on here. Pretty generic design. A lot of empty space here in the back, but that's, Hot Wheels' fault. Not mine. But yeah, another fun monster truck character for Cars Adventures. He also has really loose and just really wild suspension. You can get him in some pretty ridiculous poses. Ken Ada here is a Canadian monster truck, if you couldn't already tell. This item came from a Canadian gift shop that my sister got when she was visiting Canada back in 2023. If anyone in the comments wants to let me know how many times I said Canada in this segment, that would be greatly appreciated. I really didn't do much to modify this car. I just painted eyes on him. If you want to see a bit more about him, I did review him, I believe, for 25 Days of Suggestions 2024. But yeah, pretty simple. Canada written on the side, on the top several times. He doesn't really have a mouth. He has this little black piece of the base that sticks out and connects to the rest of him. So I was like, you know what? That kind of works as a mouth. Now he looks perpetually angry. He was a custom that I threw together pretty quickly, just painted the eyes on, didn't do anything else to. I do want to go back and at the very least paint on his headlights, but other than that, I think he's going to stay as is. Oh, and I should also remove the barcode and the price tag. But yeah, you can see this guy very briefly when we did a Monster Truck Race in Cars Adventures back in 2023. He actually has a bit of a revving feature backwards and forwards. Ah! Don't worry, I caught him. We now move into our final category, YouTuber customs. Back when I was first starting out my channel, I made a lot of customs based on my YouTube friends at the time. A lot of those channels are now gone, and most of those customs have been repurposed, but I still have a couple that I keep to this day. Starting off with Fabulous here. Fabulous Cars Fan 129 was my first ever YouTube subscriber and my first ever friend here on YouTube. He started coming up with his own backstory for custom characters based on us, with Fabulous being a racer, and his crew chief being me, Ty, who he portrayed in his videos with a Mini Adventures pit crew member Fillmore, which was pretty funny. To this day, he is the reason why the Ty custom has the number 129 on him. That came from him, because technically, in our little backstory that we made, Ty was the crew chief to Fabulous. And you saw that all the time in Cars Adventures back in the day, back when I used all of these characters in Cars Adventures. Something that I don't really do anymore. Fabulous has gone through several incarnations. He's a repaint of the Cars 2 Launcher McQueen, an item that I wish I hadn't repainted, since I really do like him and his alternate expression. But hey, if I hadn't repainted him, then it wouldn't have made a custom that means a whole lot to me nowadays. I brought back Fabulous for a surprise return in Cars Adventures in 2023, and that's what you see in front of you right here. It was super, super fun to redesign him and make kind of a modern version with my sort of modern style, changing up his previous design. We still have the silver, gold, red, and blue paint job like the classic Fabulous had, but now in a brand new form. I really love to use this guy again at some point in the future. And in case you were wondering, Frankie Fabulous from Ty's Cars 4, of course, was based on the Fabulous design. He was based on one of Fabulous's previous paint jobs, I think the paint job he had before this. Dynaco here is based on a friend of mine whose channel was called Dynaco42. And while his channel has been inactive for 5 or 6 years now, I still have his custom because of a storyline in Cars Adventures that he was a part of. Dynaco took part in Pity Kart, a Cars Adventures adaptation of the Guido Kart minigame from Cars Race-O-Rama. He trained a racer wannabe named, I think his name was Bradley. He was a little mini adventure of the king. And Dynaco and Ty worked together to train him in Pity Kart. And I've still kept Dynaco to this day, still in his Pity Kart paint job, just in case I ever want to bring back the Pity Kart storyline. Something that I've wanted to do for quite a while. If I ever do, I guess you will be seeing Dynaco once again. Yeah, we've got Pity Kart crew here, PK on the side. That's right, guys. He's the last member of the PK crew. Number 42 with a little tire, because Dynaco Tires was the company that he raced for. And yeah, not much else to say with this guy, but another custom that means quite a bit to me because of the history there. Tyler Plays 600 was one of my best friends when I was first starting out my YouTube channel. After he stopped making videos in early 2018, I kind of silently retired the character, like I did with a lot of the other Cars YouTuber customs at the time when their channels stopped operating. But in 2021, I brought this character back in a flashback, repainting his original custom into a new incarnation that simply was just the last design he was seen in the series, just repainted and updated with sort of my modern design style with the new eyes and a much cleaner look than he used to have. But yeah, when Tyler stopped appearing in the series, this was the paint job he had, just redone. He actually appeared in the exact same flashback that Dynaco Sally was a part of. And to this day, his base is still the original mess that it was back when I made him in 2017. This was supposed to look like all the parts on the base. His exhaust was coming out here, I guess, in the middle. Probably my favorite Cars Adventures plot twist ever revolves around this guy right here, Nomad. In what's probably the craziest Cars Adventures storyline I've ever done, several Cars characters were sucked into the real world for a time in the series back in 2021. They were lost and confused until they ran into a character by the name of Nomad, a Cars character who had been stuck in the real world for a very long time now. They explore with him all throughout the season, and later on it's revealed that he's actually Tyler from the early days of Cars Adventures. That's where he's been all this time. He was sucked into the real world, and his true identity was kind of hinted at thanks to the blue and silver paint that kind of stripes down on him. This is, to this day, one of my favorite things I've ever done in Cars Adventures. I thought it was so fun and kind of funny to reintroduce one of these old lost characters in this way. So yeah, as you can see, he's pretty beaten up now. He was made from a custom damaged Jackson that I had back in the day. Not the custom damaged Jackson I have now. There are actually 3 damaged Jacksons when he was damaged in Cars Adventures. This one used to be, I think, the primer Jackson Storm, who was all silver. Or actually, was he another custom? Yeah. Sorry, this started life as a YouTuber custom, actually, who had silver and gold wheels, I think. Then became that Jackson, and then became Nomad. The original Nomad is the only other custom in my collection that isn't based on a Mattel diecast. This was just a cheap plastic car that I got as a kid, and I needed a car that I could break for Cars Adventures, so I ended up just using this one. And broken this car is. This guy appears in the same Tyler backstory episode, I believe, as the repainted Tyler custom and the Dynaco Sally custom. This guy was the Nomad before Tyler was stuck in the real world for a very long time, kind of showing him the ropes. And clearly, he didn't have the best experience. He is absolutely crushed in all sorts of ways, completely deformed item, and I absolutely love how all of the wreckage came out on him. I just kind of threw him at my pavement for several minutes and scraped him against it until a ton of the paint came off. Yeah, absolute mess of an item, and honestly, I really love it. It served its purpose perfectly as a really damaged car. And, fun fact, I actually also have a mini racer custom of it, which I'm very proud of. I used Sigalert to recreate him. I just think it's kind of funny that I made a mini racer custom based on an item that, wasn't even based on a Mattel car. In case you were wondering how he scales, here he is next to Tyler. And finally, our final character here is Ty, the mascot of the channel, named after me. He's had several looks and incarnations over the years, and these are the diecasts to him that I currently have in my collection. Up first, we have Ty's Cars Adventures design. This guy was actually being repainted by me a few years back, and I never finished, so he's missing the 129 that's supposed to be on either side of him. This guy's had so many different looks over the years, a whole lot of incarnations, and I've always been a pretty big fan of this Cars Adventures design. That's why I never really changed it in this current form. It's been like this for a very, very long time now. When I went to repaint it a few years ago, I simply gave him a new coat of paint and kind of redid the writing and everything, just like I did with Tyler, to try to update it and modernize it. Ty's backstory in Cars Adventures was a pretty fun one. I always had him be a crew chief because that's what Fabulous Cars Fan came up with, and also because I didn't want to make the character based on me the center of attention. It was never about me. It was about the other Cars characters, and when I was doing YouTuber custom stuff, it was about them. It was about my friends, not myself. Just like Dynaco, Ty still has his pity cart paint job intact in case I ever decide to do another pity cart themed season. Although, unlike Dynaco, pity cart Ty is a separate variant from the original Ty. He has different wheels, which was just unintentional. Back in the day when I was doing customs, I didn't often really pay attention to the wheels all that much, and keeping them consistent, something that I definitely got better with over the years. He's basically the same as regular Ty, but with Team 43 logos and pity cart logos on him in several different places, as well as a different expression. This is the original Ty custom, made all the way back in the fall of 2017. It has remained untouched to this day. It's always been very important to me that I don't repaint the original Ty, that I keep it as it was when I stopped using it. This is a really important item to me. Sure, it doesn't have the best design. I do like what I was going for here with this sort of triangle of white with the black, and you have the Fabulous Fuels logos on it. It's pretty messy. A lot of different random stripes of different colors and stuff. Several parts of the original juxtaposed here, still clearly sticking out unpainted, which I do think actually kind of works with the rest of the paint job. That's why I left it as is back in the day, I would assume. Despite all the random miscellaneous colors, this one means a lot to me. It's important to the history of my channel, and honestly, it's important to the history of me and my life. This was the tie back when I was starting out, made a few months into the lifespan of my channel. In Cars Adventures, Ty used to not be able to race, and this was his look when he was fabulous as crew chief for about a season or two in the series. I believe the Ty character first debuted in early season 3, and he was focused on at the start of season 4, where he tries to race again, he crashes, and he's rebuilt as the McQueen model that you know him as to this day, and now he can race. Now, the funny thing is, this actually isn't the first ever tie. The first tie was used in the background of, I want to say, the first episode of Season 3 of Cars Adventures, and it was like Color Changers McQueen repaint. We just ignore that one. It was pretty horrendous. But this, this is like the go-to main original tie. That one was just used in the background of one video ever. So this is the main original tie from the start of the channel, and yeah, I'm really happy that I've still kept it as is. And now we have channel mascot tie. The Cars Adventures tie design never matched my profile picture, and I eventually, in 2019, made a specific profile picture tie custom, which you see all the time in my videos. I use this frequently in pretty much all of my live streams. It's an instrumental part of the background. This is a repaint of Beach Racer McQueen, in case you ever doubt it. There's your proof. His wheels are actually untouched from Beach Racers McQueen. Technically, the tie in my profile picture is a Bling Bling McQueen, but I just like how the tie design looks on the longer Cars 3 McQueen body better. I've left this one untouched since I made it in 2019 as well. I absolutely love that light blue paint job on the hood. I think this one still really holds up as a pretty solid custom, and yeah, still the one that I use as the main tie on the channel to this day. And finally, our last tie custom is also the final custom for this entire video, Ty's Cars 4 tie. This was a special tie custom that I made when I was promoting Ty's Cars 4. I'm pretty sure I used it in the background of some live streams and other things like that, with the Lightning Cup logo there on the hood and Ty's Cars 4 written out on either side. He was just made as a special item to promote the project that I was working on at the time. I'm honestly not sure why I still have this one. Maybe I'll repurpose it into something someday. I never want to reuse any of the Ty's Cars 4 customs, but if I reused any, it would probably be this one. At the very least, if I'm not going to repurpose him, I do need to give him a new paint job. The white between his eyes is cracking there, and so is some of the black paint. But still, it's just a fun variant of the original tie. And with that, we've come to the end of the mega review. This was the last item we had to review. Wow. Thanks for watching, guys. And there you have it, guys. This has been the T-Tour Reviews Tie Custom Mega Review. Thank you all so much for watching. If you made it to the end, or if you even just watched a couple minutes of the video, or if you skipped around, however you watched this video, thank you so much for doing it. I hope you enjoyed. I absolutely loved going back and reviewing all my customs, talking about their history, and exploring the little details that I put on all these cars that I've had so much fun making over the years. I haven't done customs in quite a while, and reviewing all these has really made me want to go back and do more, especially for Batcar. So, once again, thank you all so much for watching. Let me know down in the comments what your favorite custom I've made is, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye now. And stay tuned for the next video of Project 10K. It's going to be a big one. The new Cars Adventures fan film, Cars Off the Road. Alright, bye guys.